youth unemployment is now worse in the UK than in the EU. We all used to say that one of the good things in the UK was our youth unemployment versus those of European economies because of the structural reforms that had been done by prior generations. But that appears to have been reversed now, undermined by this Labour government. So we're going to think very carefully about how we can support more young people onto the housing, into the workplace. And yes, what they are paid is important in that equation, because we all remember our first jobs. And you only have to go around the country today and talk to people, particularly in hospitality, who are struggling enough as it is and are asking, can we afford to take on somebody to work in a pub or a cafe or a restaurant who is a younger worker? Or should we perhaps choose somebody who's slightly older, a 25-year-old who's got more experience of the workplace? These are economically harmful decisions that were not thought through by Rachel Reeves, and I'm going to be holding her to account for them. Now, we've got Alex Rogers from Sky News next. Alex.
If you go ahead and scrap the Equality Act, do you intend to replace it with your own legislation that still enshrines some of its protections? And can you guarantee that no one will lose their job because of their sex, ethnicity, or disability under your plans? Thank you. Yeah, so Suella Braverman will be setting out more details on this in the coming days. But let's be very clear. Over generations, a succession of important pieces of legislation were passed in this country to protect workplace rights, whether that was the Equal Pay Act or the Disability Discrimination Act. And we want to see those rights protected and handed on to future generations. What undoubtedly has been harmful to the way government works, to the way our economy operates, and to our society are the reforms that were taken forward by Harriet Harman in the final weeks of the Brown government when it was on its knees and on its way out, creating the public sector equality duty, for example, things that have led to perverse outcomes, like the Bank of England creating an internship scheme which white working class boys are not able to apply for. Well, I represent a working class town in North Nottinghamshire. And imagine me going to schools there and seeing kids who've been brought up in tough circumstances on a council estate in a former pit village and saying to them, oh, you can't apply to GCHQ or to the Bank of England or to an investment bank for their internship scheme because you're privileged, or because there's a piece of legislation that allows that to continue. That's not sensible. That's not common sense. And we want to change that and ensure equality before the law is the guiding principle in this country once again. Now, I've got Sam Merriman from the Daily Mail. Sam.
Thank you. Mr. Jenrick, one economic policy that you didn't mention, and I'm sure will be very important to many of your voters, is the triple lock. Will Reform commit to maintaining the triple lock into the next election? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we're going to be saying more about this in the coming days, but I've always been a supporter of the triple lock. It's incredibly important that we provide dignity and security to older people on fixed incomes in the last decades of their life, particularly in a time like this where there's such challenging circumstances with the cost of living. So I don't think your readers will be disappointed, but we'll say more in the coming weeks. And we've got Lucy White now from Bloomberg.
Thank you. You have spoken a lot about the policies that are being proposed by your colleagues Richard Tice, Zia Youssef, Danny Kruger. But the policies that you've talked about today that have come from you are a lot along the lines of sort of fiscal orthodoxy that Reform has always claimed to eschew. Do you have any ideas of your own that you might be thinking about soon that will sort of shake up the city in any way? And if I can ask as well, on fiscal rules, do you have any yet? Do you have any idea what your fiscal rules might be?
Well, on the second point, we're not going to make up fiscal rules on the first day in my role as Shadow Chancellor. That would be the opposite of the approach that we're taking. As I hope you can see from what I've said this morning, we're going to be deliberative. We're going to be careful. Successive governments in my adult lifetime have made fiscal rules, they've changed them, and they've broken them. All the while, the public finances have ended up where they are today, in a mess. So we're going to talk to market participants, and we're going to develop strict, world-class fiscal rules ahead of the next general election. As regards to the policies I've set out today, well, look, I think these are radical policies. And if you don't see that, I'm surprised. We're saying that the economic and political consensus that this country has had, probably since 1992, is about to change because it's failed comprehensively and it's let down the British people. It's been an economic consensus predicated on mass migration. Well, that's going to go. And we're going to ensure that we are the grammar school of the Western world, where we only invite in the best and the brightest who are genuinely economic contributors to this country. And as a result of that, businesses will have to invest in the productivity of their own workers, technology, better skills, robotics, the things that will drive the economy forwards. We're saying that net zero was a disastrous mistake, peddled by governments of both political colours, put on acid by Theresa May and Boris Johnson, and that is gone. And instead we're going to go for cheap and reliable energy to actually make this country competitive again in the world. We're saying we're going to bring forward serious welfare reforms, not the ones that were written on the back of a fact packet by the Conservative Party in opposition a few months ago, but detailed ones. And we're prepared to take on difficult things, to think again sometimes, like I said today, where we've chosen to say we'll bring back the two-child benefit cap in full. Not that our previous policy wasn't well meant. Of course we want to help British workers to have families, but we're also aware that we've got to live within our means and we've got to find ways other than welfare to help to support them to fulfill their dreams. And we're going to pursue serious deregulation in all sectors, from small businesses right the way up to the city. And we're going to be spending the weeks and the months ahead developing those policies. But you can be assured this is going to be a big change. And the balance we're going to strike is exactly what I set out at the end of my remarks. We're going to be conservative when it comes to preserving what's important, like fiscal responsibility and stability in the economy. We're not going to do the mistakes that Liz Truss and Rachel Reeves have done, but we are going to be radical where we need to be to shake up this economy, shake it out of its malaise, and get it going again. That's the balance we'll strike, and it's the right one for this country right now. Now I've got Alistair Lyon from City AM. Alistair.
Hi. Nigel Farage yesterday spoke about backing national champions, sort of taking stakes in British companies, and I actually interviewed Zia Youssef, who floated taking a 10% stake in Rolls-Royce. Are there any other companies that you've sort of got your eye on? And how do you reconcile that with your promise just now not to pick winners and to leave businesses alone?
Well, I think I was very clear in my remarks about what our approach is in this regard. We don't believe in picking winners. What we do believe in is that there is, in the world today, an interplay between security and economics, which only the most naive would choose to ignore. And it surprises me that some are doing so, particularly in the Conservative Party, if you listen to the remarks in recent days. Those industries, like steel, like car making, like defense, we've got to ensure we salvage them and that we preserve strategically important industries. And we also won't be taken for a ride in the world. So if countries, particularly China, want to cheat the system, dump goods on our markets, then we'll respond accordingly. But we're going to take a wide-eyed approach that protects British jobs and ensures that we can reindustrialise in the sectors, the very specific sectors, that are critical to the future of our national security, principally, and our economy. I'll go to Martina Bett from The Sun. Martina.
Thank you, Mr. Jenrick. The Chancellor recently said that the student loan system is fair and reasonable. Do you agree? And if you don't agree, what will the Reform government do to ease the burden for graduates? And just quickly, on the triple log, Based on what you've just said, it does seem like you do not agree with Nigel Farage that its future is up for debate. Could you clarify, please? Thank you.
Well, I think I was very clear on the triple lock that we're going to be saying more in time on that, but we're always going to protect pensioners. We're always going to protect pensioners because we want them to live in dignity and security. And we appreciate how life has been tough for them as a result of the bad policies of both the last Conservative government and this one. Energy prices, for example, does put immense strain on their budgets. With respect to students and student loans, look, the system is a mess. The rates of interest have been usurious recently, and the system has been set up to fail. I mean, you've actually got foreign citizens claiming student loans right now, costing the British taxpayer hundreds of millions, potentially billions of pounds, rather than that money going on skills training for our own people. We're always going to put the interests of the British public first. And we also want to ensure that our universities actually focus on what matters. Yes, some should and must be world-class institutions, and we take great pride in that. That is critical to the future of our economy. But we also want to see many of our universities get out of the market of Mickey Mouse degrees and focus on skills training for British people, particularly helping their own economy, the regional economies, to be in a stronger footing than they are today, and supporting apprentices and good quality vocational and technical degrees, exactly as Suella said in her remarks yesterday, and we'll be saying more of, I think, in the future. Very good. We've got Peter from The Telegraph.
Thank you. Two questions, if I can. Really quickly, you mentioned some sort of competition to join the OBR as if you would be a super forecaster. Can you give us a little bit more detail around what that might look like? And just one more. Last month, your leader, Nigel Farage, said the OBR is a Blairite-style quango, effectively dictating to elected politicians what they should or should not do. Was he wrong?
Well, on the point about who's staffed at the OBR, look, the OBR can't be a retirement home for people who worked at the Resolution Foundation. It's got to be for genuinely talented people who are able to produce world-class financial models. As the Times reported recently, I think the OBR was ranked second from bottom of all the forecasts in recent times. So only a fool would say that things have gone swimmingly at the OBR recently. We're going to change that. It means bring in people who have the skills that are necessary. And yeah, it does mean some competition to ensure that we actually get the right models so they're providing the right advice to the Chancellor of the day and the budget process works well. We saw, I think without question, the worst budget process, I'd say in living memory, possibly ever, with Rachel Reeves' budget, where she went month after month floating new tax rises, getting supposedly new forecasts, frankly lying about what the forecasts were when she went on the media to scare people. That's got to come to an end. So we're going to work with the OBR to reform it and make sure it's fit for purpose. But the broader point I was making is this. What was the reason for the OBR being created? Well, maybe there was some politics in it from George Osborne. Shock. But it was also because under Labour, under Gordon Brown, people had lost faith in some of the Treasury's own numbers, and there was a need to instill fiscal rectitude. And we believe in that. We're not scared of that. We want to ensure that we have fiscal stability, we have financial responsibility, and we believe in sound money. So we're going to work with the OBR, make it a better version of itself, and ensure that we have sound money at the heart of government policy going forward. Daisy, please, from The Times.
Thank you. Just firstly, specifically following on student loans, would you commit to reversing the government's decision to freeze the repayment threshold for 4 years, which effectively levied a £1 billion tax on graduates in the last budget? And secondly, you said in your speech that the Conservatives had delivered some commendable reforms to our welfare system. Could you set out what those commendable policies were, and will you rule out a return to the austerity policies of the Cameron government if you become Reform's Chancellor?
Well, I think I've said what I need to say on students. I'm not going to make up policy here. It's very clear the approach that Reform is going to take. We're going to have a deliberate attitude towards policy. Things we say will be well thought through and fully costed, and nobody's going to be standing at podiums like this making stuff up on the hoof. With regard to, sorry, what was the second half of your question?
You said that Conservatives have...
Oh, welfare reform, sorry, apologies. Look, we're fair-minded in reform. We will praise things that were good, and we will oppose things that have been bad. The very early days of the last Conservative, in fact, coalition government, under Ian Duncan Smith, there were good reforms brought forward, which set out to make work pay. And as a result of that, the economy improved. There were more disabled people, for example, who were helped out of welfare and back into the workplace. Youth unemployment came down and remained relatively low compared to our competitors. And overall, employment levels were good in the country. And so let's be honest about that. And one of the reasons why that happened, incidentally, was that in opposition, careful thought and planning was taken to prepare those reforms. However, after COVID, it's been a complete mess. The benefits bill has ballooned. The last Conservative government clearly took far too long to respond to that. And as a result of that, millions of people are out of work, claiming benefits. The benefits bill is going to bankrupt this country. And we've got to ensure that we fix that, because we're not prepared to leave people in that situation. And taxpayers know it's unfair. I've got, next, we've got Jonathan Walker from The Express.
Thank you. I think it's clear from what you've said that you feel that the quantitative easing of the past was a bad idea. But what can the Bank of England really do today to control inflation more, apart from keeping interest rates high, which means presumably higher mortgages? And also, can I ask you, it is striking that at this point you don't seem able to say that the party, quite able to say that the party is committed to the triple lock. Is it fair to say this is something that you've been taking a good hard look at?
No, it's something we're going to be talking about in the coming days. But look, I think I've been very clear on that, that you know, your readers will not be disappointed by our view on that. We want to protect pensioners and those who rely on it. As regards to the Bank of England, I was very clear that the blame doesn't solely fit with the Bank of England. The furlough scheme pumped hundreds of billions of pounds into the economy and created massive inflation as a result. You've seen that with quantitative easing, both after the financial crash and during and after COVID as well. There is a role for government and the Chancellor, who has to ultimately take responsibility to be very careful with inflation, whether that's in those regards or with respect to public sector pay. And the message that I hope we've landed today is that reform takes inflation extremely seriously. We've got now Alistair from Reuters.
Hi, thank you. You mentioned that you wanted fiscal headroom before you had any tax cuts. If you achieved that fiscal headroom, what would be the first tax cuts that you would prioritise? And just on the fiscal rules...
Well, just to be clear, I mean, if I haven't been already, we're not going to make tax and spend promises right now. So sorry to disappoint you on that front, but we're going to take these decisions in time very carefully.
Sure. And on the fiscal rules, would you be open to keeping the current fiscal rules if the feedback you get is that they work well, or even making them less restrictive? Or are you pretty sure that you want tighter fiscal rules and it's just about how it works?
I think we're going to have to take our time and work through this. It's only the second day in my position, but I've been clear. We're going to have strict fiscal rules, and the point is we're going to actually talk to market participants in the weeks and months to come. We're going to tour them, listen to their views, and develop them ahead of the next general election. William from the Press Association.
Hello. Hi. How would you... We've been talking about inflation today quite a lot, and we're inching towards that 2% target. Andrew, how would you rate Andrew Bailey's performance at the bank, and would you keep that target in place if you were to join the Treasury?
Well, I've been very clear. Of course, we're going to keep the target in place, and it's incredibly important to us. You know, reform serves working people, and we want to make sure we keep their bills down. At the moment, people are suffering because bills are far too high. And so that's going to be a major priority of our economic policy, to find any ways, whether it's energy bills, water bills, you name it, to try and get those bills to come down. I've got Aggie from LBC.
Thank you very much. Robert Jenrick, can I just clarify your position on the minimum wage for younger workers? Because it sounds like, and indeed Richard Tice told us this on Monday night, that you are looking at cutting minimum wage for younger workers. If that's right, how much by, and also...
We're not, if I can stop you, we're not proposing to cut the minimum wage. The minimum wage will be set by Rachel Reeves and the government, long in advance of the next general election. So there's no suggestion of that. But I think there's a very legitimate concern about young people in the workplace right now. And we've got to ensure that we set policy accordingly. And we are concerned that increases that are being proposed are going to make it much more difficult for employers, particularly in some of those sectors that are under strain, like hospitality, to take young people on. But we're not going to cut the minimum wage, if that's your question.
Okay, so the minimum wage is going to remain the same. If the government raises it in government, if reform were there, you would keep it the same as what the government had raised it to?
We're not going to cut the minimum wage once it's been set, but it is right to raise concerns. I think, from what we've heard today, Rachel Reeves has recognised herself.
Great. And second question, you've nearly been in Reform UK, you've just been there over a month. What's the thing that surprised you the most in your new party?
The incredible energy, enthusiasm, momentum that there is. There's no other party like this in British politics, I can assure you. Right, I've got Emilio from Politico.
Hi, Robert. I've got two questions, if that's okay. You talked about the chaos that Liz Truss unleashed. So why didn't you resign from her front bench while she was doing it instead?
Well, I did resign from one Conservative government. I can't resign all the time.
Well, you could. If you really disagreed with the economic policies, why did you sit quietly there?
Well, I didn't, if I can say that, I didn't sit quietly, as it so happens, as I think I think it's the book that Jeremy Hunt wrote will record that I phoned him up the weekend he became the Chancellor, told him exactly what I thought were the problems with the mini-budget and told him to reverse all of it. And he records that me and one other Conservative did that. So I made my views pretty clear at the time. And if I may say so, when I was standing to be leader of the Conservative Party, I was the only person who said that I thought that mini-budget was careless and cack-handed. And I've also pretty clearly said that I'm surprised that Liz Truss is still a member of the Conservative Party, but that's not my problem now, as they say.
Well, thank you for that. And I want to ask you about your new head of policy, James Orr, who last August he said that the Russian invasion of Ukraine is a regional Slavic conflict that he didn't care very much about. And he said that the UK approach of defending Ukraine is dangerous and championed the Hungarian approach, which is basically blocking support to Ukraine. Do you agree with that? And is this the man who should be devising foreign policy for reform?
Look, firstly, Reform's position is very clear. Reform stands with Ukraine and against oppressors like Vladimir Putin. There's no doubt about that. James is a very talented man who I've known for a long time. We worked together many years ago. He's one of the most intelligent, thoughtful people, fantastic understanding of policy, understanding of geopolitics. He's a great asset to the party. I'll go to Tim Stanley now from the Daily Telegraph.
Thank you. Good morning. Rob, when you were a Conservative MP, you said that Nigel must have, quote, had one too many pints before pledging to abolish the two-child cap.
No, I can't believe that's the case.
Well, you've clearly won the battle on this policy. So does this U-turn, plus keeping the OBR and keeping bank independence, represent the end of populism in reform and the Toryfication of the party? And on the policy itself, you say you want to be the party of alarm clock Britain, but as you know, working families also benefit from lifting the benefit cap, which is predicted to draw hundreds of thousands of people out of relative poverty. Suella Braverman, when she was a Conservative MP, described the cap as unfair and said it had pushed people into poverty. So can you today persuade Suella Braverman that she's wrong?
Well, let me be clear about this. The policy that the party adopted was well-meaning and was focusing support upon British workers and their kids. And look, we all want to see those people be able to have families and lead good lives. The issue is that our economy is in a mess, mainly as a result of disastrous decisions that have been taken, including latterly by Rachel Reeves. So we've got to live in the world as it is. Unfortunately, we can't afford to do this right now through welfare. There will be other ways in which we can help support and encourage families to prosper in the years ahead. But it's not going to be through welfare. That's why we've made this decision. It's a tough one, but it's an important one. And it shows our intent that Reform is not a party of welfare. We're going to be bringing forward serious reforms in the months ahead to bring down that welfare bill, help people back into the workplace, and ensure fairness for working people once again. I'll go to Will Hay. We're working through these. There's a few left, so we have to be a bit faster now. Will Hazel from the I.
Thank you very much. Robert, you mentioned labour rights as an area where Britain could gain a competitive edge, I think you said. Do you have any particular rights in mind which you think we should get rid of? And if I may, Nigel Farage is a very dominant figure in the Reform Party. Are you confident you will have the latitude you need to determine policy? And sometimes a Chancellor has to say no to their Prime Minister. Are you prepared to say no to Nigel?
Well, I've only worked with Nigel for a few weeks, but it's been extremely positive. I found him to be immensely hardworking, which I respect. Somebody with incredible knowledge and understanding of politics and the economy. Some real-world experience, who worked here in the city and is, rather different record to some of our chancellors and prime ministers. And somebody who is good at working with people, and that's exactly what we want to do. We want to have a good working relationship. Nigel is the leader of the party, so it's not surprising that at the end of the day, he's the person who makes the final decisions. And what a relief it is to be in a party with a strong leader who everyone respects. I think that would be a good thing generally for other political parties. I'll go to Max from Guido. Oh, sorry.
Well, there we have it, the big economic announcements from the Reform Party, and it kicked off with several U-turns. The Reform Party no longer supports the abolition of the two-child benefit cap. The Reform Party no longer supports the abolition of the Office for Budget Responsibility. Robert Jenrick casting a more cautious note on reform economic policy.
Well, it seems quite a wise move, because you know how these comments come back to bite you. So Robert Jenrick talked about how it falls to Reform to fix Britain, a new economic model. He said many chances have unleashed chaos. Britain needs reform. They believe in fiscal responsibility. And it's interesting because Rachel Reeves sort of said the same thing. He said, I say to the bond markets that we respect you, after Andy Burnham sort of seemed to disregard them. And he said that they'll be cutting benefits of foreign nationals and capping foreign aid at $1 billion.
Well, there we have it. Let's get some reaction now with the Labour Member of Parliament, Catherine Atkinson. Catherine, thanks indeed for being with us here this afternoon. It seems that Reform is trying to move its tanks onto economic turf, and they seem to have a lot to say about how Rachel Reeves has managed the economy.
Well, I think he was asked at the end there whether it was a Toryfication of reform, but I think the frustration many people will feel is you do not hire the man that crashed the car to then fix the car. And I think no matter how many Tory MPs or former Tory MPs that Farage brings to surround himself with, I think people remember where that failure occurred. Jenrick, like Farage, fully backed Truss's budget, a budget that sent mortgages spiralling, many people are still feeling the effects of that. He was a health minister that saw waiting lists skyrocket. He was a migration minister that opened the migrant hotels, which we are now trying to close. And he was a treasury minister at a time when we suffered the worst cost of living crisis. So I think Jenrick is the poster child for what not to do in government. And they've made him spokesperson for the economy. But what makes me really cross with the announcements around their new spokespeople is that there is no one for defence and there is no one for the NHS. And I think that people who serve in our armed forces and people who work for our NHS should be hearing loud and clear that Reform clearly don't think that our defence or the NHS are important. But yes, we keep talking about what former Tories say. What I think is really important is to look at what Reform are doing in local government. Because while we had so many promises about cutting taxes and cutting waste, what we've seen when they are actually in charge is council taxes going up to the max. And they're not cutting waste, they're closing care homes here in Derbyshire. They're not finding ways of becoming more efficient. They're closing and cutting adult education. So I do think that people need to look at what they're actually doing rather than just listening to what they promise they'll do in future.
Well, I do hear you, because everyone has to make promises. The Labour government made many promises beforehand, didn't they? But then it seems that in local government, the Labour government, well, for some odd reason, didn't want to have elections, but we won't go into that. He also talked about being careful with taxpayers' money and the welfare that has been spent currently. What about the situation with welfare with regard to Labour? Because, a lot of people are watching it thinking, well, why are so many people being given welfare, and why is it that a Labour government with such a great majority can't fix that, at least?
I think it's absolutely right that we need to make sure that more people are supported into work. But the other thing that he said very clearly is that he's going to go back to the Tory policy of the two-child cap. And when 2/3 of families who are supported will be supported by that, when that is lifted, are in work, that is Reform again saying that, just like the Tories, they want to make sure that children are hungry again, rather than doing what this government is doing and lifting 500,000 children out of poverty.
Now, there was a lot that he said about this country's dire economic performance over the last 20, even 30 years by some accounts, particularly focusing on our lack of building and our expensive energy. Now, these are two areas that it does seem like the Labour government is not particularly performing well on. Our energy is still the most expensive in the Western world, particularly our industrial energy. It doesn't seem like it's getting any cheaper. Energy bosses are saying it's going to get even more expensive, even if the price of gas comes down. Because on our bills is the price of building out all of these renewables and extra pylons and all the rest of it. You might say it's a good thing to do for the climate, but it is expensive. And the other thing, of course, is building houses, which this government seems to have promised 1.5 million. All the independent experts say this is a big, big failure. London, a city of 10 million people, only started to build 6,000 homes last year. It's a pathetic, what is it? The target is 90,000, and under Sadiq Khan in London, just 6,000 are being built. It's astonishingly poor.
I'm really happy to talk about building homes, because that 1.5 million homes is absolutely needed. We promised to deliver it by the end of this Parliament. I think that we did absolutely see a failure to build the homes that we need under the Conservatives. We also need to ensure that we have the skills, which is why this government is ensuring that we have technical excellence colleges in construction. And it does take time to build, but that's the direction that this government is going. Because
planning applications are down, Catherine.
The whole point about the planning legislation that we are going through is to ensure that we can rapidly accelerate. So I think that this is you're too early in this government to be able to have seen that 1.5 million homes that will be built. It will be built by the end of this government. That was the manifesto commitment. And when you talk about energy, I want to ensure that we no longer are relying upon foreign fossil fuels. I don't want to have Russia with their foot on our necks when it comes to energy bills. And the specific things that this government are doing are taking £150 off energy bills, which we will be having come in. But it's exactly the things like that, and like having the frozen prescription charges and the frozen rail fares, and ensuring that we are seeing wages going up, that's action that's being taken to tackle the cost of living. But I definitely don't want to return to not seeing the kind of investment that we are seeing in clean energy, because there are so many brilliant jobs and skills that are going into that many, many people rely upon.
Oh, and very briefly, he talked about governments underestimating the power of cutting taxes. Taxes are at their highest. Are we going to see at any point soon some sort of relief or tax cut?
Well, it was the unfunded tax cut promises that that Truss brought in that sent everyone's mortgages spiralling.
But
so I think
the
that
Labour government,
while we've been very light on the kind of detail that Jenrick said he didn't want to get into, I think that is where people's minds will go when they again start hearing about promises about tax cuts. But what's essential is that we do tackle the cost of living, and that is what's absolutely front and centre for this government.
Just on the numbers.
I was going to say, though, but that's part of the cost of living, isn't it? The high taxes, really. So if they're going to tackle that, that's why I asked.
Yeah.
I think that the reason that we were so determined to ensure that people didn't see tax rises in their pay slips is because we want to ensure that they've got pounds in their pockets to be able to spend in our high streets and in local economies. So I think that is absolutely essential. But what's also essential is ensuring that we have the money to fund as well as reform our NHS. And that's something that Reform don't seem to be talking about at all. And they can't even be bothered to announce a health spokesperson, yet alone anything that's going to ensure that we see the NHS invested in and reformed so it's fit for the future. But maybe it's because they all seem very relaxed about an insurance-based system.
Well, we are hearing from Reform that they will be announcing more, quote-unquote, shadow... I mean, they're not the official opposition, but shadow cabinet positions as time goes on. Spokespeople on these positions, so we'll have to wait and see. But for now, Catherine Atkinson, thanks indeed for joining us, Labour Member of Parliament.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Well, joining us now, Chief Political Correspondent at The Times, Aubrey Allegretti, who joins us. Aubrey, so you've heard what they said. Some people would say that perhaps Reform are making mistakes by having all these press conferences, because you know what it's like when you get into government, people start replaying what you said you were going to do, and then you don't do it. Do you think perhaps they're kind of shooting the gun just a bit too soon?
I think it's really interesting. I mean, I'm speaking to you from a very quiet House of Commons where obviously MPs are on recess, and Reform like to grab the attention during these moments where actually the sort of political agenda is largely vacated by the main two political parties and MPs are away on holiday. Robert Jenrick, I think there's a lot of pressure and expectation on him. He has sort of mild experience, I think at best, of economic policy, having served as a sort of junior Treasury Minister, I think in Boris Johnson's government, possibly Theresa May's. But then after that, obviously, he went on to roles running MHCLG, the Housing, Communities and Local Government Department, and then being a sort of health and social care minister, and then obviously immigration minister. So he's got a lot to prove here. His allies have been briefing for months, actually, that he wanted to replace Sir Mel Stride as the Shadow Chancellor. And so this is really his first chance to prove that he's up to the challenge. Now, there were lots of answers that we didn't get. So he gave some warm words on the pensions triple lock, but they sort of seemed like phrases that were designed to make him sound more sort of amiable rather than that he was kind of guaranteeing anything in the long term. He didn't set out some of his fiscal rules. And of course, we didn't get any clarity about one of those big issues at the moment, which is about student debt repayments. So it was a sort of speech that was designed to reassure the markets, try and cool everybody down and make sort of some senior Reform figures appear less zany who've attacked the OBR and the Bank of England. But I'd say so far a sort of solid first performance for Robert Jenrick, but he's got a lot to prove.
He's sort of the straight man to Nigel Farage's charisma, I suppose. Farage can go out there and give speeches and give interviews saying, I'd like to do this, I'd like to do that, and then sort of give it a little asterisk at the end of that sentence says, subject to Robert Jenrick's adding up. You know, he can sort of still be that effervescent political figure that he has always been, but now there's a guy to whom he can refer on the numbers.
Absolutely, and there was a really good question asked during the press conference, which was effectively, are you ready to say no to Nigel? And it didn't sound like Robert Jenrick was sort of terribly forthcoming in saying yes. He basically said, well, Nigel's the leader and he would be Prime Minister, so he's the one that makes the final decisions. But of course, if you're running the Treasury, you are the person that has the control over the purse strings. We know that there are other senior figures in Reform who have very different views about what should be happening. Suella Braverman, as picked up in another question in the press conference there, said in 2024 that the two-child benefit cap should be abolished, and it was punishing working families by pushing children into poverty. You've obviously got other senior figures in Reform like Zia Youssef and Richard Tice who have made many pronouncements on economic policy that Robert Jenrick is going to find, I think, quite hard to maintain that really tough line.
He also sort of dodged the question about the triple lock, and he said that he'll say more about that in the coming weeks. I mean, that's a hot potato.
He certainly did. He said, I've always been a supporter of the triple lock. And then when he was asked by, I think it was the Daily Mail, he said, I'm sure your readers won't be disappointed. Now, the pensions triple lock has been a sort of area of really interesting omission for reform. They've almost sort of circumvented the subject much more than both Labour and the Conservative Party have. But that's despite the fact that lots of economists say it's rising at an unsustainable rate, given inflation's been high, given that growth in the economy is low, and of course, given the ageing population. That means that demographics mean that fewer children are being born to replace those in the workforce to generate revenue that pays for the pensions, and more people are claiming pensions. So it's not quite clear whether Robert Jenrick is sort of up to the task of staring people down and saying, actually, we need to make serious reforms to the pension triple lock.
And this is a really important point. A lot of pensioners believe that they paid into a system, there's a pot sitting there for them. Unfortunately, it's a Ponzi scheme. Politicians have lied to old people and those who have retired for generations because their money isn't safe. Their money hasn't been saved and locked away. It's already been spent. And so it's current taxpayers that need to fund these pensions. But interestingly, Robert Jenrick used the phrase, we're going to look after people on fixed incomes. Fixed incomes. And he sort of sounded like there was going to be a policy that needs to be announced on this, which makes me sound like it might be a policy change from what it is currently. I mean, could it be some sort of means testing that the very richest pensioners no longer get the same sort of pension uplift every year that those on more meagre incomes or perhaps fixed incomes might?
It's a really good question. And of course, he sort of doesn't address the fact that when he says we need to crack down on Britain's benefits bill, that the biggest sort of spending cost of benefits is pensions. And obviously the amount of that is up for debate, but the triple lock maintains that it rises by a rate that is effectively outstripping the wage growth seen by workers. And so, yeah, there is a big question, I think, for Robert Jenrick there. He can talk about scrapping the two-child benefit cap, an interesting policy, a shift in reforms policy from a few weeks ago, which was in itself a shift in reforms policy from a few months ago. But the sort of cost saving there is a couple of billion. And, that's no small amount of money. But in the grand scheme of things, reform is going to find it very hard to do some of the drastic tax cuts that it wants to implement if it isn't also making spending cuts as well. And so it would sort of, I think, be a relatively fair question for Robert Jenrick to face in the next few weeks as he gets his feet further under the table. What's he going to do about the triple lock? Can he guarantee it into the next Parliament, which is 2034?
And the caveat for all of that as well, what we said before Rachel Reeves got in has changed because she's wrecked everything. All right, thank you very much, Aubrey Allegretti. Really good to talk to you. He's the chief political correspondent at The Times. Thank you.
Now, let's get back to some of that breaking news that was occurring before this press conference. Yes, a British patrol has ordered a group of Chagosians who attempted to set up a settlement to leave the islands.
Yes, Chagos First Minister Maisni Mandarin, who led the group of people that landed on the archipelago on Monday, spoke to GBNews earlier.
We've been exiled from the homeland more than half a century, and now having bio patrol vessel come and serve this to me, a removal order, saying like I have to leave the atoll, my homeland. If I don't, I might be in prison for 3 years or pay a hefty fine of £3,000, which is very appalling to me, and I'm very angry about it.
Well, our very own Home and Security editor, Mark White, has been following this extraordinary story. Mark, this is quite difficult to follow what's going on.
Yeah, but the optics of it are just absolutely terrible. Let us show you the images of this British Indian overseas territory patrol boat that landed on this remote atoll, one of 60 atolls that make up the Chagos archipelago, where this group of 4 Chagosians, along with some support crew numbering 5 others, have landed this week. They want to reclaim these islands for the Chagosian people, who, of course, we know were forcibly evicted half a century ago. They are very resistant to the islands being handed over to Mauritius. the Diego Garcia military base, of course, at the centre of this row. Well, this patrol boat, just in the last couple of hours, landed on the island, served a notice to the crew on board the boat, where they're filming this patrol boat from, and then landed on the island itself and served notice to those on the island, including those 4 Chagosians, saying that they are effectively trespassing and breaking the law, that they have got to remove themselves from the islands immediately, or, they say, face the consequences, arrest and potential imprisonment of up to 3 years in jail, or indeed a fine of up to £3,000. Now, this is clearly what we're seeing here. It's very heavy-handed by the British state moving in there to forcibly remove the Chagosians. Again. And it's not lost on the Chagosians and their supporters that what we might be witnessing is the forceful eviction of the Chagosian people, or at least a small group of them, for the second time in 50 years, having been kicked off the islands all those years ago in what really was quite a brutal operation to remove them, where their livestock, their pets were put into pits and gassed at that time. And of course, ever since, they have been effectively without a permanent home, many of them staying, of course, in the UK around the area of Gatwick Airport, where they first came off that aircraft from Chagos. So they're there, they want to raise the plight of the Chagosian people. They want to very much oppose what Sir Keir Starmer is planning to do, which is to give the Mauritians the Chagos Islands and pay them, you know, for doing that, £101 million every year for the next 99 years.
But Martin Mandron, he's now the First Minister of the Chagos, and also, why is he trespassing if it's British territory and he's in British territory? What are the rules around that island? Are you not allowed to go on any of those islands?
Well, of course, the British government moved in and evicted them and have claimed that the islands and the archipelago are off limits, and they've been enforcing that quite heavily over the years. But you've got a very difficult, potentially legally sort of arguable situation now in the Chagos Islands, where the original people, the Chagosians, at least a small portion of them, have landed back there and may well be able to argue in a British court, maybe even using the ECHR, yes, which is used to such great effect for the many tens of thousands of people who land on our shores illegally and claim asylum, etc. They may be able to argue that they have a legitimate right to be back there in the land of their birth and the land of their forefathers.
Well, Mark, I've just had an errant thought run into my mind. Last night, the US State Department decreed that they supported the British handover of sovereignty of these islands to Mauritius. Indeed, there's been some speculation that it was the State Department that was pushing this in the first place years ago under the previous administration in the United States. Could it be that the Americans would rather the Mauritians are in control of these islands because they're not signed up to the ECHR, because they don't have any human rights for their people, because the Mauritians running these islands would be under less international pressure to keep the Chagosians out, and the Americans don't want the Chagosians there?
Well, I mean, I don't know if that is the fundamental thinking behind what the US are doing. Maybe they're just making the best of a bad job, which is a deal that Britain has signed up to here, and that's why a US delegation is heading to Mauritius next week for talks with the Mauritian government to try, I'm sure, to get those assurances from Mauritius that it's going to stay away from the Chinese, who, of course, they are very close. They have a close affiliation with the Chinese. And the US government is very concerned about, obviously not Diego Garcia. The deal is that they would continue to be able to operate the base around Diego Garcia for the next 99 years. But what happens if the government in Mauritius decide that they want the Chinese similarly to have a base on one of the other islands.
The Americans might think that they just don't want any of these islands inhabited apart from Diego Garcia and the base. I mean, maybe this is why they don't want it to be British.
Well, nor were they, and there was never really a particular issue about them being re-inhabited while the base was under British control. But clearly now,
there's a lot
that is one of the issues.
Well, Mark Wyatt, thank you for that. There's a lot to talk about, and the bit where Starmer's friend raked in a share of 8 million for the giveaway as well, but we could get stuck into that in a moment. But this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show.
Yes, a top London restaurateur declares war on influencers, saying camera-wielding diners are driving away real customers.
But first, if you're in search of some holiday sun, not in the Chagos, but to Europe, then here are the options.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Things are warming up in the Canaries over the next few days after a very wet winter so far. It does look a bit drier, certainly in southern Spain, but there is still some rain to come over northern Spain on Thursday. Some more snow for the Pyrenees, fresh dumps of heavy snow heading to the Alps. Another band of rain sinking south across Italy, bringing some wet weather to Rome on Thursday. But once that's out of the way, the sun should be shining once more in the Italian capital for Friday, Saturday and Sunday. Goodbye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Hello, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Plenty going on again today. We've got some pulses of heavy rain across the south and Northern Ireland. Later on, we could see some snow, particularly over parts of the Midlands and Wales, along with southern parts of the Pennines. Low pressure is dominating, one sitting out to the west, but it's this little feature coming up from the southwest that's giving everything a little bit more energy and providing some heavier bursts of rain across the south. Of course, it's been so wet here that this extra rain could cause some further issues. A very wet day for Northern Ireland. Some of that showery rain getting into southwest Scotland, but much of northern Scotland dry and bright. Much of eastern England staying dry but cloudy and quite cold as well. Temperatures only 4 or 5 degrees for many of us, and certainly feeling cold with the wet weather across the south. As that moves northwards, likely to generate some snow, initially over the hills of Wales, but could come down to lower levels later on. So one to watch. Quite a wet evening rush hour across the south. Rain mostly for the Midlands, but some snow is possible, certainly over parts of Wales too. And a warning still in place for rain and a bit of hill snow across Northern Ireland into this evening. A few showers in the northeast of Scotland, but as I said, a good part of Scotland actually dry through the day today. Now, we're likely to see the snow getting a bit heavier over parts of the West Midlands and into the Welsh Marches and across Wales and up into southern parts of the Pennines. I say most of the snow over the hills, but we could easily see a few centimetres here over the higher ground, but even down to lower levels there could be some for a time, and obviously not very pleasant to drive through. Many areas just seeing rain though, which will linger across a good part of England overnight. As the skies do start to clear, things could turn a bit icy over parts of Wales and again the West Midlands, where we've seen any snow falling through the night and still a bit of rain around in the morning. Staying pretty damp across northeast England tomorrow, rain returning to the northwest. Otherwise things looking a little dry, but still on the cold side. There are signs of things turning milder for the weekend.
Thank you for making us Britain's #1 news channel. Together, we have built something truly extraordinary.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. On the A90 south of Lawrence Kirk, the northbound carriageway is restricted after a road traffic incident. In Leeds, the M621 westbound exit slip at Junction 7 is closed after a collision, expected to ease after 1 this afternoon. On the M6 southbound between junctions 26 and 25, a broken down vehicle has one lane closed, with conditions improving after 2:30 today. Around London, the M25 anti-clockwise has a lane closed after a crash. And on the trains, cross-country has disruption between Stockport and Bournemouth. Great Western Railway reports disruption on multiple routes. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just gone 10 minutes to 1.
Now, have influencers ever ruined your dining experience or inspired you to try somewhere new? Celebrity chef Jeremy King says that he's fed up with influencers overrunning his restaurants, claiming his latest London opening was hit by influenza-like outbreaks of content creators.
So, are influencers ruining the dining experience or redefining it? Well, joining us now is the celebrity chef Aldo Zilli. Aldo, thanks so much for being here on the programme for us. What's your view on this? Do influencers bring people to new places or are they a nuisance?
Of course they're not a nuisance. We forget that when Jeremy King opened the Ivy and I opened Silly Fish, the phones didn't exist. So, you know, we've got to move with the times. If you don't want them in, it's very simple. I've just been to 3 pubs around here to connect to the internet, to speak to you guys in Victoria, and they don't have internet. They don't have Wi-Fi. So, you know, if you don't want them in, then it's easy to tell them not to come. But there is a downside because they are quite influential. That's why they're called influencers. And some of them have got millions of followers. You want them in your restaurants. It's free advertising. I totally disagree, actually. I welcome influencers. I've just opened Aldo's Pizza in Bromley inside the Royal Bell Hotel, and we welcome, you know, without influencers, it's instant advertising. And it's, you know, the social media is what we have to embrace. I've got a 19 and a 17-year-old at home. If I said any different, they will probably never speak to me again.
Yeah. But what if it drives your other customers away, regular customers who might come in a lot? Usually these influencers only come in, do a couple of pictures, and they probably never to be seen again.
Well, you know, if that's the case, then you need a security guide to tell them not to come in. But it's, you know, it's far and few between. I don't know what the best thing to do is. I don't particularly mind. A lot of restaurateurs can't stand it. I know I have a lot of friends that you know are restaurateurs, and they're trying to ban them from coming in. You know,
maybe they should have. Maybe they should have a little area where you could, the area like Area 51, and leave them there, which doesn't interfere with anything. Aldo Zilli, I'm coming to your restaurant in Bromley. I'm going to go. Sounds lovely. Lovely to talk to you, Aldo. We have to leave it there. Thank you so much.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more to come, including the latest on the Chagos Islands after your latest news. Weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Plenty going on again today. We've got some pulses of heavy rain across the south and Northern Ireland. Later on, we could see some snow, particularly over parts of the Midlands and Wales, along with southern parts of the Pennines. Low pressure is dominating. One sitting out to the west, but it's this little feature coming up from the southwest that's giving everything a little bit more energy and providing some heavier bursts of rain across the south. Of course, it's been so wet here that this extra rain could cause some further issues. A very wet day for Northern Ireland. Some of that showery rain getting into southwest Scotland, but much of northern Scotland dry and bright. Much of eastern England staying dry but cloudy and quite cold as well. Temperatures only 4 or 5 degrees for many of us, and certainly feeling cold with the wet weather across the south. As that moves northwards, likely to generate some snow, initially over the hills of Wales, but could come down to lower levels later on. So one to watch. Quite a wet evening rush hour across the south. Rain mostly for the Midlands, but some snow is possible, certainly over parts of Wales too. And a warning still in place for rain and a bit of hill snow across Northern Ireland into this evening. A few showers in the northeast of Scotland, but as I said, a good part of Scotland actually dry through the day today. Now, we're likely to see the snow getting a bit heavier over parts of the West Midlands and into the Welsh Marches and across Wales and up into southern parts of the Pennines. I say most of the snow over the hills, but we could easily see a few centimetres here over the higher ground, but even down to lower levels there could be some for a time, and obviously not very pleasant to drive through. Many areas just seeing rain, though, which will linger across a good part of England overnight. As the skies do start to clear, things could turn a bit icy over parts of Wales and again the West Midlands, where we've seen any snow falling through the night and still a bit of rain around in the morning. Staying pretty damp across northeast England tomorrow, rain returning to the northwest. Otherwise, things looking a little drier, but still on the cold side. There are signs of things turning milder for the weekend.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Make sure you don't miss the chance to grab an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. And that's not all. Courtesy of Riviera Travel, there's a terrific £10,000 holiday for two to be won. Choose from over 30 worldwide destinations like Thailand, South Africa, or even Sri Lanka. There's just 2 weeks left to enter. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB19, PO Box 8690, Derby, DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 27th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
This may get you a little bit angry. Not that Alton Towers has cracked down on visitors with ADHD and anxiety for using disability fast lane passes, but the fact that they were around in the first place.
They say that demand for the Q-skip passes has surged. Well, not surprising.
No, well, the move comes as obviously we're seeing more diagnoses of ADHD and people claiming, crippling anxiety. Well, not even crippling anxiety, actually, because that's a different matter, but, claiming anxiety. The medication for ADHD has more than doubled since 2015, though it is worth pointing out for those people who really do have ADHD that getting hold of the medication is nigh on impossible at the moment.
I think queue jumping is not the right word. This is about making a reasonable adjustment to help people feel more comfortable, to allow them to access areas and also parts of society that they may not otherwise be able to access. And I like to think that people don't do this to lie or to get ahead. I think they genuinely do need it. And I don't think we will be questioning this as much if it was a physical disability that we could see.
Alton Towers is a well-run commercial business, so I'll say something for them which they won't say because they look after their customers. But they've become aware that some people are gaming the system. And so they haven't banned people with anxiety. They've just tightened up the rules, number of people who can go with them and the border at which somebody can be accepted as having anxiety. Now, the problem is, let's get to the core issue. Anxiety is the modern day equivalent of, doctor, I've got a bad back, OK? You can get signed off with anxiety by just talking to a doctor down a Zoom screen for a few minutes and you're off.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 1 o'clock on Wednesday, the 18th of February. I'm Nana Akua.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
We want to help British working families to have more children. But right now, we just can't afford to do so with welfare. So it has to go. What Britain needs is to change course and to forge a new political economy. What Britain needs is reform.
Yes, Robert Jenrick vows to restore the two-child benefit cap in his first speech as Reform's Treasury spokesman, announcing a U-turn. He claims the country needs reform to improve the economy and defuse the benefits bomb.
And being careful with your money means tackling our exploding welfare bill. So our benefit system is broken. That's not fair, that's not right, and it is an economic and a moral disaster.
So, does reform have what it takes to rejuvenate the country's economy?
Bottom line, is our Prime Minister. The decision is in his hand to save his compatriot, his British fellows.
Yes, a British patrol has ordered a group of Chagosians who attempted to set up settlement on the island, resettle the island, leave it.
Now, almost 1 in 6 young adults are out of work, and now Labour is rethinking the raise on minimum pay. Is the government locking a generation out of work?
Elsewhere, officers launch a legal bid to overturn a century-old ban on joining trade unions. So should police be allowed to strike? No, obviously not.
Well, a Transport London advert has been banned after the watchdog ruled it reinforced negative stereotypes about black teenage boys. We'll discuss whether this was the right decision. I was going to say, it's ironic, isn't it, that a human rights lawyer, so Sir Keir Starmer, seems to be denying people's human rights, as it were, because he was talking about the predetermination for the people on Greenland, but somehow doesn't seem to be wanting to talk about that for the Chagosians.
It's astonishing. What is our Prime Minister for? He built his entire career on being someone who will fight for the downtrodden, on being the human rights lawyer who will fight for their human rights. And now he's ordering native Chagosians to leave their native island because he's done a dodgy deal with Mauritius, costing our taxpayers' money to the tune of tens of billions of pounds.
Madness.
And what's he doing for that? What's he getting out of it? I mean, I think
I don't know
the only thing that he must think here is that these aren't the right kind of minorities, because they like to wave our flag, because they like Britain. And so these Chagosians who are on this island, to Keir Starmer, are the wrong type of native people.
It does seem a bit odd if he's so enwrapped in this human rights stuff. He's done helped so many other people in other cases where he feels that those people have been done wrong by, but the Chagosians have been thrown off their land once, and now they're going to do it again. So I find it quite astonishing that some of the other news outlets don't seem to want to cover this as a big story. It's a national story. It's of national importance to the British people because we are sovereign on those islands, which the Prime Minister is literally changing the course of history without anyone's real permission and literally giving them away, but we have to pay for it.
It is just the most extraordinary story. You would think that a left-wing, human rights-obsessed Prime Minister would be standing up for these people and their right to return to their homeland, and instead he's casting them adrift. Worse than casting them adrift, he's sending out a patrol boat to arrest them. Astonishing.
I mean, you couldn't make this up, could you? I don't know. Well, anyway, send us your thoughts, your comments, gbnews.com/your say. You can also scan that QR code. But first, your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Tom, Nana, thank you very much and good afternoon to you. The top story this lunchtime. The Metropolitan Police says it is carrying out initial inquiries into close protection officers formerly assigned to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. The move follows claims from a former senior officer that members of the Royalty and Specialist Protection Unit may have turned a blind eye during visits he made to Jeffrey Epstein's private island. The Met Force says it has not identified any wrongdoing so far, but is working to establish the facts. Any further investigation would be handled by the police watchdog if concerns are found. It's worth noting Andrew has always denied any offence, and a previous settlement with Virginia Giuffre was not an admission of wrongdoing. Reform UK's newly appointed Treasury spokesman, Robert Jenrick, has accused recent Prime Ministers of being defeatist on the economy as he set out a tougher welfare stance in a speech today in London. He confirmed the party would restore the two-child benefit cap in full, tighten eligibility for some benefits and reform, not scrap, the Office for Budget Responsibility, while keeping the Bank of England independent. The move marks a shift in Reform's previous policy, with Mr Jenrick saying the country can't afford to scrap the cap. Sir Keir Starmer, though, has criticised the plan, calling it shameful, and said it would push hundreds of thousands of children into poverty. Well, Mr Jenrick also criticised both Labour and the Conservatives over economic policy and used his speech to launch a sharp attack on Rachel Reeves' record.
Instead of offering stability, she's unleashed chaos. Benefit cuts in, benefit cuts out. Inheritance tax up, inheritance tax down. Almost every possible tax rise on a business or a worker floated in the pages of a national newspaper for week after week after week, with devastating impact on business confidence.
In other news this lunchtime, the Prince of Wales has spoken out about taking time to understand his emotions as he called for more men to talk openly about mental health.
Part of feeling comfortable talking about mental health is understanding it. And if you've got guys who have really gone about trying to really learn about what feelings are, why we feel like we do, what can we do about it, that's part of the conversation too. We need more male role models out there kind of talking about it and normalising it.
Well, speaking on a special episode of Radio 1's Life Hacks, Prince William said more male role models are needed to make conversations second nature. The Prince's Royal Foundation is also contributing £1 million towards a new national suicide prevention network, bringing together organisations across the UK. He said checking in with yourself and sharing feelings can help people through difficult moments, and added that mental health crises are often temporary. Inflation has fallen sharply to its lowest level since March last year, with the rate falling to 3% in January, according to the Office for National Statistics. That is down from 3.4% in December, putting inflation back on a downward path in line with forecasts. Falling petrol prices helped drive the drop, with the average price down by just over 3 pence per litre, alongside lower airfares and slower food price rises. The ONS chief economist Grant Fitzner says cheaper bread, cereals and meat also pushed the rate down, though hotel stays and takeaways did rise. The Chancellor Rachel Reeves has said cutting the cost of living, is still her number one priority, and added that the government's economic plan is the right one to bring inflation down. Well, Helen Morgan from the Liberal Democrats told us it's good news, but long overdue.
I spent yesterday in the constituency meeting with businesses. They feel quite bleak about the future. They feel that the jobs tax has caused them a lot of problems. They're struggling to recruit in some instances. I think there's a lot of gloom out there about the economy. So this will be, a slither of welcome news. But we need to see the Chancellor do much better on supporting our businesses.
6 Palestine Action activists are set to face a retrial on criminal damage charges over a break-in at a UK base of an Israeli defence firm. The group had been on trial over claims they drove a prison van into Elbit Systems in Bristol, a factory there, and used sledgehammers during the protest. All 6 were cleared of aggravated burglary, while some were found not guilty of violent disorder. But jurors could not reach verdicts on several charges after more than 36 hours of deliberations. Prosecutors are now pursuing a new trial on criminal damage and other outstanding allegations. And just before I hand you back to Tom and Nana, let's return to that story regarding the Epstein files. We're just hearing reports from Surrey Police that they are now urging people with any information to come forward about claims of human trafficking and sexual assault that may date back to 1994, which appeared in the Epstein files. That also comes, of course, after the Chancellor Rachel Reeves today called on Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor to himself come forward to explain what he knows about the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. She said earlier that Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor owes it to the victims. So that from the Chancellor, and also the latest from Surrey Police, urging people with information to come forward about human trafficking claims and sexual assault dating back to 1994. Those are the latest headlines this lunchtime. Now it's back to Tom and Nana.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Well, here's a quick look at the markets for you. Just coming up to 10 minutes past 1, the pound will buy you $1.3576 and €1.1470. The price of gold is £3,640.56 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 1,650 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's now 11 minutes past 1, and Reform's quote-unquote shadow chancellor, Robert Jenrick, has unveiled the party's economic policies, vowing to restore the two-child benefit cap in full and limiting welfare only to British nationals. Let's have a quick reminder of what he said.
We want to help British working families to have more children. But right now, we just can't afford to do so with welfare. So it has to go. As Reform's shadow chancellor, I'm ending it. A Reform government will restore the cap in full. We are the party of alarm clock Britain. We are a party of workers and not welfare.
Robert Jenrick also launched a scathing attack on previous governments, claiming that they broke their fiscal rules as the Reform MP vowed to fix the benefit system.
Benefit system is broken. That's not fair, that's not right, and it is an economic and a moral disaster. That's why I commit to you today that if we win the next election, Reform will defuse the benefits bomb that is set to bankrupt Britain.
Well, joining us now is our very own political editor, Christopher Hope. Christopher, before we get to Robert Jenrick, it's a big economy day. You've also been speaking to the Chancellor.
Well, that's right. Yeah, so she spoke to broadcasters earlier in Kent, in a Sainsbury's. I mean, I think we can. I mean, Robert Jenrick might call himself the shadow chancellor. He's really just the finance spokesman for a party of 8 MPs. The chancellor is Rachel Reeves. She's in government, and here's what she had to say about the fall in inflation from 3.4% to 3% this month.
So inflation has fallen this month to 3% from 3.4% where it was previously. The budget measures that I took in November will come into effect in the next couple of months, and that will see £150 off of people's energy bills, prescription charges frozen for the second year in a row, and rail fares frozen. So that will take more money off of people's bills, and that will see further reductions in inflation. The Bank of England and the Office of Budget Responsibility are expecting inflation to return to the 2% target within the next few months.
So good news there for the government, but nowhere near their 2% target, Tom and Nana. We all know about that. But trending downwards, that is good news for anyone, all of us concerned about the cost of living crisis. A minor row broke out in that speech from Robert Jenrick, that Reform's new finance spokesman earlier. He committed to his party in government to reinstating the two-child benefit cap. He said this: the policy was well-meaning as a way of encouraging families to have more children, but it was unaffordable, he said. Reform was a party of workers, not welfare, so it has to go. That prompted a stark response from Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. He's in Wales today, campaigning and speaking to people there. He said this was shameful. The PM said, "I'm incredibly proud this government has scrapped the cruel two-child limit. Reform wants to push hundreds of thousands into poverty." It's a bit awkward, frankly, for Robert Jenrick, because by mistake, earlier this month, he voted with Suella Braverman to lift the two-child benefit cap because he went into the wrong voting lobby in the House of Commons. So he voted alongside Labour MPs, SNP, DUP, Plaid Cymru. That was awkward. But now we know where he stands. This reform, if it ever forms a government, will it reimpose that two-child benefit cap? And that language there we were playing moments ago from Jenrick, so interesting. It reminds me so much of George Osborne. The idea of alarm clock Britain was exactly what George Osborne said when he tried to paint his party, the Tory party, of course, as the party of strivers, not skivers, workers, not shirkers. That language is straight out of the Tory playbook from about just over 10 years ago.
And does that raise questions about the Toryfication, if I can put it in those terms, of the Reform Party? There's certainly a tension now between perhaps the more cavalier attitude that Reform had until today on public spending, on intervention in the economy, on being a little bit more gung-ho about what the market reaction to a policy announcement might be. In an attempt to professionalise Reform, could it now be seen, well, the markets might like it, but might the voters not?
Well, it depends what voters you're talking about, because I think voters who are concerned about the economy don't want a Liz Trussite concern in the markets. Of course, Liz Truss would say they were caused by other concerns about long-term pension issues there. But you don't want to spook the markets on a reform government coming in. So it's up to Robert Jenrick, frankly, to be disciplined, maybe not come out with a policy of lifting the income tax threshold from £12,500 to £20,000, costing about £80 billion, as in fact Nigel Farage said about a year ago, and then it was unwound, of course, after that. So I think it's right, frankly, to try and put this party into an area of not saying things which will scare the markets, and that's what they're doing. But there is a Toryfication, and that's a great word to use, Tom, because we are yet to see any major people jumping ship from the Labour Party. We're told by the leader, Nigel Farage, yesterday they are talking to people across the country about jumping ship. That suggests to me Labour councillors, not Labour MPs, by the way, but they are talking to people, he says. But we're yet to see it. And looking at that, the five individuals on stage, the four behind Nigel Farage, it did feel quite right-wing, quite Tory-heavy, quite male-heavy. There's work to be done, I think, by Reform UK before it can look like it's a party ready for government.
Oh, all right. Christopher Hope, thank you very much. He's GB News' political editor. All right, well, let's speak to the independent chief political commentator, John Rentoul. John, I thought that it was a very strong speech from Robert Jenrick. He was asserting his position. Does he seem convincing to you?
Well, not that convincing, but I mean, it's a welcome move in the right direction. I mean, never mind Toryfication. Accommodating reality is always a good thing to see in a politician, and giving up the idea of abolishing the Office for Budget Responsibility, that's a step forward. Giving up the questioning of the independence of the Bank of England, which Richard Tice was doing, that's a step forward. And it was, I thought it was interesting that Robert Jenrick actually echoed quite a lot of Labour slogans, a lot of things that Rachel Reeves said in opposition, such as Reform being the party of workers, not welfare, saying we're not going to promise things that we can't afford. Very, very Rachel Reeves, and saying, well, look after your money as if it was our money, not something that Labour has kept to in government, but it's a good promise to make.
Well, could it be that all of these vote-seeking parties all commission their own independent polling and focus groups, and this is what the voters tell them, that they want politicians to be careful with money, that they want the politicians to be forthright and not to splurge things, and they want them to back the workers and not the shirkers and all the rest of it? I mean, shouldn't we be... It's a bit like all cars nowadays go through the same wind tunnels, so they all look the same. I mean, all these politicians are sitting in the same focus group, so they all sound the same.
Well, no, that's because the voters want the same things, and politicians who are serious about government. I mean, at the last election, nobody thought Reform was going to form a government. So Nigel Farage and Richard Tice could happily propose £90 billion worth of tax cuts with no idea where the money was coming from. But if you're if you're taking the possibility of a Reform government seriously, and I think everybody has to, then it's good that the Reform is taking its responsibilities seriously and taking reality seriously, and not proposing fantasy economics instead.
Now, yesterday, a lot of people complained because they said that Nigel Farage hadn't appointed somebody in defence or in health, because these are big pressing issues. Do you think he was wise not to do that? Or do you think perhaps he just didn't have enough people to do that, or the right people?
No, I think he's pursuing a very sound media strategy of spreading the announcements over a period. And actually, he has been dominating the...
Oh, you've frozen, John. I wanted to hear what you had to say.
Do you know what Reform should announce? A technology secretary to get the broadband out across this country a lot better. That would at least help us on this channel. But a big thank you to John Rentoul for being there for us. Lots more to discuss, of course. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more to come.
Yes, should police be allowed to strike? Easy answer, no. Officers launch a legal bid to overturn a century-old ban. But after the break...
Yes, dramatic standoff in the Indian Ocean as a British patrol boat orders Chagosians who returned to their homelands to leave.
Well, all that and much more to come. You're with the GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I ever got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's fast approaching 25 minutes after 1 o'clock. Now, a reminder of that breaking news. A British patrol has ordered a group of Chagosians who attempted to set up a settlement to leave the island.
Well, Chagos' own First Minister, Maisley Mandarin, who led the group, has spoken to GB News a little bit earlier today.
Bottom line is our Prime Minister. The decision is in his hand to save his compatriot, his British fellows.
Well, exactly. GB News' Home and Security Editor Mark White joins us to tell us it's Mike White. No, Mark White. He joins us.
You call me anything you like now. You're my favourite.
Thank you, Deirdre.
You didn't say no, but tell us more, Mark. Just give us an update on what's going on.
Well, listen, this was significant news this week, of course, when that small group of Chagosians landed back in the island archipelago that they were so forcefully evicted from half a century ago, but of course comes against the backdrop of this very controversial deal to hand the Chagos Islands over to Mauritius, with all the implications that that has for national security, with the base at Diego Garcia, etc. So they landed back, but today, now we have, and we can show you the images, I think, of that British Indian Ocean patrol boat out there enforcing the will of the British state, which seems to be, on the face of it, a very heavy-handed intervention here to serve these people with notices that they will be arrested if they don't leave the islands immediately. And not just that, they could face, according to the members of the patrol here, this British Indian Ocean patrol boat patrol, they said that they could face 3 years in jail or a £3,000 fine, or indeed both. So clearly, forceful intervention by the British authorities, trying to evict the Chagosians from what, of course, most right-minded people acknowledge is their home anyway, that they were forcefully evicted from by the British some 50 years ago. Now, you showed a short clip of it to First Minister Misley Mandarin. So not only is it a small group of Chagosians, but actually it's the most senior Chagosian in the land, the First Minister, who is there. And this was his reaction earlier to what the British had done in terms of serving these notices.
We've been exiled from the homeland more than half a century, and now having patrol vessel come and serve this to me, a removal order, saying like I have to leave the atoll, my homeland. If I don't, I might be in prison for 3 years or pay a hefty fine of £3,000, which is very appalling to me, and I'm very angry about it.
Shocking.
3 years imprisonment threatened by our government to this man for returning to his homeland, which he wants to remain proudly British.
And it's not lost, actually, on members of our audience who really are engaged with this story, have been messaging in, expressing their outrage and pointing out that Sir Keir Starmer, Sir Prime Minister, who has allowed more than 65,000 small boat migrants to break in to this country in small boats, and has little, if any, answer to either stopping the incursions of these small boats, or indeed moving any that have entered the country illegally back out of the country. But yet here you have islanders, British nationals, returning to their overseas territory, being threatened immediately with very significant, severe, draconian measures should they resist.
Could they use the ECHR, though? Because this is what the migrants use when they come to this country, they break in and come here illegally. Surely they can use that.
I think that's a very good point, Nana, and I know that supporters and legal counsel for the Chagosians are looking into that possibility of getting before the British courts and using human rights legislation to say, look, you know, this surely cannot be right. The people who were forcefully evicted in the first place return to not just our ancestral homeland, but, you know, in the case of the father of Misley Mandarin, he's there with him, was born on the island and is now returned to them. So absolutely, you would think any sort of right-minded reading of this might suggest that they have a bit of a legitimate claim here, as awkward as it might be for the British government to acknowledge that, and a human rights lawyer like Sir Keir Starmer, who's devoted his legal career over the decades to fighting similar actions on behalf of downtrodden and repressed people.
We've got a word for this in the English language.
Hypocrite.
I was going to go with Quisling.
Really?
Because it was Mr. Quisling who was the installed fascist in charge of Norway during the Second World War. It's where we get the word quisling from, who was forced to do the bidding of an authoritarian other state. And now we have this bizarre situation where Keir Starmer refuses to control our borders here in Britain, but is very happy to be outsourced to Mauritius to do their border control for them ahead of what he is desperate to happen, which is the handover of our islands to this East African country.
Mark and I in saying hypocrite. I think there was a loud thunder of people saying hypocrite.
No, I honestly think, you know, hypocrisy here is off the scale, you know, in terms of what our Prime Minister has devoted his life to, which is on the human rights side of law, where he earned his spurs and fought many a case that, you know, many of our audience would think this is outrageous that he's, fighting for those kind of causes. But he has done that, except when it comes to something that is not sort of politically expedient necessarily for him to be all that sort of invested.
I think he's embarrassed, Mark. He's embarrassed that Muslim Mandarin and those other people on that island are not behaving in the way that he wants natives to behave. They are proudly waving the British flag. They see themselves as Chagosian and British, and he feels embarrassed by that fact.
And they're waving the American flag as well, saying to Donald Trump and the American government that they're here, that if they return to those islands, they are more than happy to continue for Diego Garcia to continue as a US military base, a vital base in that part of the Indian Ocean.
All right, Mark White, thank you very much. Oh, the irony of all of this. Keir Starmer, I want to play that clip where he says that the Greenlanders should be allowed to have their own place and they should have self-determination. What about the Chagosians, Sir Keir Starmer? You're welcome to come on and tell us about that one.
He won't. Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's programme. But first, let's catch up on all the other latest news headlines.
Very good afternoon to you. Just after 1:30, the top stories this lunchtime. Police are appealing for information after allegations of human trafficking and sexual assault dating back to the mid-1990s, emerging in the Epstein files. Surrey police say redacted report refers to alleged offences involving a minor in Virginia water between 1994 and 96. Meanwhile, the Met Police is also making initial inquiries into former close protection officers linked to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. They say there has been no wrongdoing identified so far. Reform UK's Treasury spokesman Robert Jenrick has accused recent Prime Ministers of being defeatist on the economy as he set out tougher welfare plans. He says the party will restore the two-child benefit cap and tighten eligibility. Sir Keir Starmer, though, has branded the proposals shameful, warning they could push hundreds of thousands of children into poverty. 6 Palestine Action activists are set to face a retrial on criminal damage charges over the break-in at an Israeli defence firm's UK base. Jurors cleared them of aggravated burglary but failed to reach verdicts on several counts after more than 36 hours of deliberations. Prosecutors are now pursuing a new trial. And inflation has fallen sharply, with official figures showing the rate of price rises dropped to 3% in the year to January. The Office for National Statistics says that's down from 3.4% just a month earlier, and the lowest level since March last year. Chancellor Rachel Reeves says the government's economic plan is the right one to bring inflation down and support growth. Those are the latest headlines. A full roundup from the newsroom at 2.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Thank you, Sam. Lots more coming up on today's show.
Should police officers be allowed to strike or unionise? Well, officers launch a legal bid to overturn a century-old ban.
Yes, all of that and much more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Hello, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Plenty going on again today. We've got some pulses of heavy rain across the south and Northern Ireland. Later on, we could see some snow, particularly over parts of the Midlands and Wales, along with southern parts of the Pennines. Low pressure is dominating. One sitting out to the west, but it's this little feature coming up from the southwest that's giving everything a little bit more energy and providing some heavier bursts of rain across the south. Of course, it's been so wet here that this extra rain could cause some further issues. A very wet day for Northern Ireland. Some of that showery rain getting into southwest Scotland, but much of northern Scotland dry and bright. Much of eastern England staying dry but cloudy and quite cold as well. Temperatures only 4 or 5 degrees for many of us, and certainly feeling cold with the wet weather across the south. As that moves northwards, likely to generate some snow initially over the hills of Wales, but could come down to lower levels later on. So one to watch. Quite a wet evening rush hour across the south. Rain mostly for the Midlands, but some snow is possible, certainly over parts of Wales too, and a warning still in place for rain and a bit of hill snow across Northern Ireland into this evening. A few showers in the northeast of Scotland, but as I said, a good part of Scotland actually dry through the day today. Now we're likely to see the snow getting a bit heavier over parts of the West Midlands and into the Welsh Marches and across Wales and up into southern parts of the Pennines. I say most of the snow over the hills, but we could easily see a few centimetres here over the higher ground, but even down to lower levels there could be some for a time, and obviously not very pleasant to drive through. Many areas just seeing rain though, which will linger across a good part of England overnight. As the skies do start to clear, things could turn a bit icy over parts of Wales and again the West Midlands, where we've seen any snow falling through the night and still a bit of rain around in the morning. Staying pretty damp across northeast England tomorrow, rain returning to the northwest. Otherwise things looking a little drier, but still on the cold side. There are signs of things turning milder for the weekend.
Thank you for making us Britain's #1 news channel. Together, we have built something truly extraordinary.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Road users should take extra care on the A9 Dornoch Bridge, where high winds are affecting driving conditions. In the northeast, there is a crash on the A1 southbound exit slip to the A1 231 at Gateshead, with one lane closed. In Leicester, a serious incident on the A46 southbound between the A6 and the A5630 has closed all lanes. And on the trains, cross-country services between Stockport and Bournemouth are disrupted, and Great Western Railway is reporting disruption on multiple routes. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 38 minutes past 1. Now, police strikes have been banned since 1919 amid fears of chaos and lawlessness.
But now the police body, the National Police Association, is challenging the century-old restriction, arguing that officers should be allowed to join a trade union, potentially paving the way for legal strikes.
So should police officers be allowed to strike? Well, joining us now is the former London police officer and director of the Law and Order Foundation, Norman Brennan. Norman, where do you stand on this?
Well, I've always been against the police striking for the simple reason is that if the police no longer police the streets, the public and victims of crime have no one to protect them. However, I completely give my complete reverse opinion now. 100% I believe the police service should be absolutely able to strike. For the simple reason is they failed by absolutely everyone. The Police Federation, their own bosses, the Independent Office of Police Conduct leaves officers dangling. It destroys officers' lives and careers, often under investigation for years. The Crown Prosecution Service do the same. The criminal justice system fails the police, victims and the public by releasing persistent and serious offenders day in and day out, so the police do nothing more than actually chase their tails. The criminal justice system is in chaos, and I say this ashamedly. I've been a police officer for 31 years and in law and order for in the region of 40 odd years. I believe that the police service are not just broken, they are shattered. We need a root and branch overhaul of British policing if we've got any chance of the police service giving anywhere near the service that the public and victims require.
Well, look, I hear that. I kind of second it in some respects, but the reality is, if the police are allowed to strike, and I think it was in 2013, they tried to ban the ban on strike action. They tried to be allowed to strike again. But the truth is, if they do go on strike, sadly, the place will be completely lawless if it isn't already. But I do take your point. But is that the right way to fix the situation, by allowing them to be able to strike because they've been failed?
No, I'll reverse that question as well to you and all the viewers. And it's this. Last year, 50,000 police officers were assaulted. 9,000 police officers resigned last year. They threw the towel in. And recent research says that 29% of all serving police officers are looking at resigning in the next 12 months. Do you know how many police officers out of 143,000 that is? It's nearly 42,000 police officers. Police officers are broken, and I'm telling you how serious it is. And it angers me, really, to have to stand up for the police like this. They are failed by just about everyone. They've become the Aunt Sallies of society, and they've reached the point now where nobody cares about them. They don't care about their welfare. I've just told you how many people were assaulted. 100 police officers since 2022 to last year committed suicide. Over 200 attempted to commit suicide. Who the hell cares about police officers? And I'm that angry. I'm telling you, I'm that angry. I've been thinking about it for 4 hours driving back from Lincolnshire. How the police get up every day and they stand between good and bad, right and wrong. And for that, they can never win. So we reach the point now where if the police have to resign, and not resign, if they have to actually take this sort of action where they actually strike, I promise you this, and sadly, nobody's going to take any notice. This country will descend into anarchy within 7 to 14 days, and it will be then that the public and the government and the criminal justice system realise the value of policing. Does it really have to come to that?
And yet, Norman, for the best part of 107 years, we've had a settlement in this country where senior figures in the government, where the Police Federation and the bodies that preceded it, where all of these individuals backed the police. Is it right to throw the baby out with the bathwater, undo the settlement that worked for this country well for decades, and completely throw it away, introduce trade union politics into our policing, political policing, which I don't think anyone wants to see? Is that really the solution here? Or is there a better way? To return to how we treated the police in decades past, where we have government ministers and others who actually support our officers?
If that's what it takes, yes. If it means this country descending into anarchy, which I do not want, and it's not why I'm on here, but they have been fouled by everybody, Tom. They have been fouled by literally everyone. You talked about 1919. That's when the Police Federation was set up to represent its frontline officers, constable to chief inspector. That inspector was promptly sacked. Do you know who the second police officer in history was that broke from the ranks and risked their life and career? It was me. When I was a serving police officer, I saw what was coming. I saw the knife crime epidemic, the gun crime epidemic, shoplifting, street crime, all the crimes you see today. There are thousands of interviews that I have done whilst a serving police officer, actually warning and highlighting. I told them about the perfect storms. No one listened and acted. The perfect storms come. I'm telling you now, as Britain's leading law and order campaigner of almost 50 years of policing and law and order, we are on the brink of anarchy, and the police service are the ones that get the brunt of it all. They've had enough. They're sick and tired of being pushed to the limit, committing suicide, attempting to commit suicide, years and years on under investigation, and nobody bloody cares about them. I'm that angry. Why? Because I speak to police officers every day, strong policemen and women that eventually are broken and throw the towel in. And these are the men and women that you and I and everyone listening to needs to walk the streets and protect society. They've had enough, and that's how bad it is. I'm 100% behind the striking.
Norman, we hear you. I kind of agree with you in many respects. I think there might be a better way than striking. but I would like to see the police being treated respectfully and have all the things that they need to do their jobs properly. Thank you very much, Norman Brennan. He is the former London police officer and the director of Law and Order Foundation. Thank you so much, Norman. Thank you for those passionate words.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there is plenty more to come on today's programme.
Yes, a TfL safety advert banned after regulators say that it reinforced a harmful racial stereotype. But was the watchdog right?
Well, now, if you're in search of some holiday sunshine, here's the weather in Europe.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Things are warming up in the Canaries over the next few days after a very wet winter so far. It does look a bit drier, certainly in southern Spain, but there is still some rain to come over northern Spain on Thursday. Some more snow for the Pyrenees, fresh dumps of heavy snow heading to the Alps. Another band of rain sinking south across Italy, bringing some wet weather to Rome on Thursday. But once that's out of the way, the sun should be shining once more in the Italian capital for Friday, Saturday and Sunday. Goodbye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
He's Alex Young, 46. He lost his right leg below the knee only last year after a very old football injury caused a bone infection. And you now chose, didn't you, Alex, to actually have it amputated in the end because it was such pain.
Yeah, it was the best option for what I needed. 4.5 years of pain, and just needed it gone.
Yeah, but under those circumstances then, aren't you provided with... I mean, people would assume that you're provided with all the kit you need.
You are. You are given a leg from the NHS, and depending on how active you want to be, they're limited on what they can do. I wanted to do a 5K run for the Dorset County Hospital in Dorchester, and they can't provide me with a running leg. So they can't provide me with a blade, so the best option was to wait a year, which I didn't want to do, and I wanted to do the run in July. And so I thought best option, make my own.
Now, as if you hadn't got enough to cope with, going through an amputation, losing your leg, learning how to walk on one, because you have an engineering background, you saw this as a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, and it keeps my mind active, because you could be sat recovering for 6 months, and I'd already done a year's recovery from an older injury where I lost a toe. That's the one I made from bits from eBay,
Let's have a closer
Amazon.
look at it. Yeah, right. So they are all bits of proper professional
They're
legs,
proper
aren't they?
prosthesis parts.
This is the important bit you wanted for the running.
Yeah, that's the springback foot, so that's a bit of an active...
That looks almost like it's carbon fibre.
It is carbon fibre, yeah. And there's different categories and weight class, so depending on how heavy you are.
Yeah.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Now, a Transport for London ad showing a black man verbally harassing a white woman has been banned for reinforcing racial stereotypes, despite only receiving one complaint by the Advertising Standards Authority. Take a look at the advert.
Oh, am I not good enough for you, son? Why are you not chatting to me? I said you look good and you don't want to go out with me. Can you hear me? You look at me when I'm talking to you.
Right, well, this one complaint led to that advertisement being banned, but it was, of course, part of a wider campaign, TfL's Act Like a Friend campaign, urging Londoners to safely step in when they witness harassment or hate crimes on public transport.
Right, well, joining us now is campaigner Ken Himes. Ken, what's wrong with it? Why do you believe it's reinforcing stereotypes?
Simply because, in the context in which it's been made, if it was a movie, it'd be something different. But because of the TfL label behind it, people will associate it for being something that was real, that took place. I would say, why couldn't they have the roles reversed? Why couldn't the black boy sit down and let the white boy be the aggressor? You've still got the same dynamics, but you've got a different context.
Sorry, do you think...
Let him finish.
Ken, do you think it is only the case that TfL should only be allowed to produce adverts that have white people being the aggressor, that have white people being the harasser or the predator?
You should have let him finish, you'd have found out.
Well, because of the years of systemic abuse that my community has been directed at my community, I feel that this is the time to turn things around and to be much more mindful in what context you are putting these young black men, what situation you're putting them in. I find it's a kinder and gentler way.
And yet,
that you
Ken,
can
we've had
across.
umpteen adverts where white people have been the perverts and the aggressors. Take this example from just a few years ago, where TfL put forward an advert showing a white man in a suit sexually harassing a woman of colour. Now, this was an advert that was widely promoted across social media. It was played out in many different ways, and there was a poster campaign as well. That didn't receive complaints. That wasn't taken down. And yet, as soon as TfL shows that a black person might be capable of doing a heinous deed just as a white person is capable of it, that gets taken down.
I said there isn't a problem showing other people of colour or people from a different nationality committing crime, or harassment in this situation here. But I'm just saying that it's still, to me, it's still too early for that to be continued in the sense that you're having the black youth being the aggressor. I'm just saying quite clearly, why couldn't we have the roles reversed? You still got the two people.
But Ken, there has been one with the roles reversed. To be honest, I mean, it could be a true reflection of what goes on in some of those places. In some of those places, black men will attack people. In some of the spaces, white men will attack people. It's not a non-truth. And I think in part of the ad, his friend was a white person, but in the corner or whatever. But look, I didn't even see the colour, if I'm honest. I looked and I thought, yeah, because it's a perfectly normal reflection of what happens in the city, as if a white man potentially attacking someone. It doesn't really matter, does it? Why is the colour so relevant?
Because of the historic nature. Like, give you an example. When Boris Johnson was in power, he did some stop and search, know your right cards, and he had in there a black man confronting the police saying, "Oh, why always me? Why always me?" And I thought that was missing the point, because it puts in mind that the aggression comes from the black man, from the black youth, not the situation that's being created. And I'm thinking it's about time that we be much more thoughtful about what we're trying to put across, particularly when you are the authority who's trying to bring about change. Yes, black boys, people from different race commit the very same crime. And if we're going to do something, I think, why not just blank out people's face and just make your point?
Well, what about being realistic, though, Ken? Because it is the case that disproportionately we do see a particular problem of violence amongst black boys, black men, in London. It is a disproportionate, sad thing that does occur in this city. I mean, surely we need to confront these truths.
And it's reflected also in the misuse of stop and search that disproportionately affect that very same community. So what are we trying to do? Are we trying to say it's okay?
Stop and search is not disproportionate compared to the proportion of different groups that do the crimes. We can see this in the statistics. I mean, the number of knives seized, for example, it looks disproportionate if you see the proportion of black people who are stopped, but actually of the proportion of those who carry knives, it's completely proportionate.
It's not. And I would say more white youngsters carry knives than black youngsters. But yet it's portrayed as the black youngster is predominantly carrying knives. And it has to be, because we only represent 4% of the country. So you can't be telling me that we're carrying more than anybody else in the country. It just doesn't equate to my common sense and from what I see on the ground.
Of course, this is about proportions. This is about particular per capita issues. I don't want to be bogged down too much in the details of knife crime, of course, but this advert does seem to be perhaps not the big disaster that a lot of people said. Ken, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
your
much,
time.
Ken. I hear what you're saying, but let's be realistic with this. You know, you can have white people or black people attacking each other. Well, the TfL spokesperson said, our aim is to ensure that our advertising reflects London's diverse population and does not perpetuate any stereotypes, just as we ensure that our services are as fair, accessible and inclusive as possible. We're sorry that this social media advert, a shortened version of the full 2-minute advert, includes a diverse range of ethnicities, falls below our usual high standards when viewed in isolation.
The ASA also said, although we understood that TfL had intended to present a range of diversity and scenarios across the campaign when we considered the ad, when seen in isolation, the effect of perpetuating negative racial stereotype about black men, perceptions of threatening behaviour. On that basis, we concluded the ad featured a harmful stereotype, was irresponsible and likely to cause serious offence.
This is Good Afternoon Britain. Lots more coming up on...
There's only 2 weeks remaining to see how you could win a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash. Plus, we could be sorting out your summer with an incredible holiday for two worth £10,000, courtesy of Riviera Travel. You'll get to choose from 47 tours in over 30 worldwide destinations. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB19 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 27th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, though. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Wednesday, the 18th of February. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Nana Akua.
We want to help British working families to have more children. But right now, we just can't afford to do so with welfare. So it has to go.
Robert Jenrick vows to restore the two-child benefit cap in the first speech as Reform UK's Treasury spokesperson.
What Britain needs is to change course and to forge a new political economy. What Britain needs is reform.
Yes, he claims the country needs reform to improve the economy and defuse what he calls the benefits bomb.
And being careful with your money means tackling our exploding welfare bill. So our benefit system is broken. That's not fair, that's not right, and it is an economic and a moral disaster.
So does reform have what it takes to rejuvenate the country's economy?
Bottom line is our Prime Minister. The decision is in his hand to save his compatriot, his British fellows.
Yes, a British patrol has ordered a group of Chagosians who attempted to set up a settlement on one of the islands, one of the atolls, to leave.
The Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has defended his U-turn on council elections today, blaming local authorities for wanting to postpone elections in May. We will bring you the latest on that.
And almost 1 in 6 young adults is now out of work. Now, Labour is rethinking yet another hike in the minimum wage. Is the government locking a generation out of work?
Essex Police assesses new information about private flights linked to Jeffrey Epstein through Stansted Airport as calls grow for a full UK investigation.
It's Ash Wednesday, marking the start of Lent for millions of Christians across the country. Will you be giving anything up? Well, good afternoon, Britain. 2 minutes past 2 o'clock, and the Reform Party Shadow Chancellor Robert Jenrick has unveiled the party's economic policies, or at least many of them. It's included a couple of U-turns. Yes, they now vow to restore the two-child benefit cap in full, welfare going only to British nationals, of course, but also a U-turn on abolition of the Office for Budget Responsibility, which the party now say they'll keep.
We want to help British working families to have more children. But right now, we just can't afford to do so with welfare. So it has to go. As Reform's Shadow Chancellor, I'm ending it. A Reform government will restore the cap in full. We are the party of alarm clock Britain. We are a party of workers and not welfare.
Robert Jenrick also launched a scathing attack on previous governments, claiming that they'd broken their fiscal rules as the Reform MP vowed to fix the benefit system.
The benefit system is broken. That's not fair, that's not right, and it is an economic and a moral disaster. That's why I commit to you today that if we win the next election, Reform will defuse the benefits bomb that is set to bankrupt Britain.
Well, joining us now to discuss this is the chairman of the Reform Party, Dr. David Bull. David, thanks indeed for joining us. Let's start with the not so much elephant in the room, but of course, lots of criticism to the government for their, 15 now U-turns. The Reform Party has today committed 2, by my count, U-turns.
Sure. OK, let's start at the beginning. This is the next phase in the maturation of our party. And actually, I thought Robert spoke incredibly well this morning to a very packed room, actually. And of course, this is all part of us preparing for government. In terms of our policies, which we're setting out, he was really clear that everything we do will be costed. It won't spook the markets. It won't do what Liz Truss did, which is essentially to offer tax cuts and higher spending all at the same time. It won't be the abomination that is Rachel Reeves's last budget and her economic policies. And this is about saying let's take the two-child benefit cap, for example. It is a laudable policy to abolish it, but actually it's not affordable because Britain is broken. And you saw that in the slogan above his head. So this is about saying we will have pragmatic policies, they will be costed, thoroughly costed, and we will work with the markets to ensure that actually they settle well.
He avoided answering the question about the triple lock, though, which was interesting the way he did that. I thought, I thought he handled that quite well. But is there anything in place for that, or any?
I don't think he did actually avoid it. He said that actually it's really important we look after older people in society. And of course, they have been treated abysmally over the last few years. What he did say was that over the next few weeks and months, we will outline exactly what we will do. But he also made it clear that GBNews viewers will actually be happy with the result when that is announced. Make no mistake, again, what he is doing is ensuring that everything is thoroughly costed, that when it is put forward, it's pragmatic, it's affordable, that actually what we need to do is to unleash the power of the British economy. One of the things that actually I was so pleased to hear him talk about is the rise in house building that we need to get on with to ensure that young people can get onto the housing ladder. He also talked very passionately about small businesses, and many of your viewers and listeners will know that employers have been completely hamstrung by, for example, the rise in employer national insurance. We know that they cannot afford to take young people on to ensure that they get good jobs in society. And so this is something that we as a party are really clear about. We want to be on the side of young people, older people, people who contribute to this country, that we will put in place policies that enable this country to grow, to develop and to prosper.
Hearing him talk about housing specifically, I know a subject he's very, very passionate about, and clearly a big crisis facing the country right now. Intensification, particularly in our inner cities. He spoke about East London specifically as one area for intensification. He also spoke about Cambridge, to have almost it's the Michael Gove plan, really, an entire new town replicating Cambridge. I mean, is reform now a YIMBY party? Yes, in my backyard.
Well, I think, Tom, the East End of London, there are huge swathes of post-industrial land that simply haven't been built on, and that is down to bureaucracy, and the fact is you have to fill in so many forms and actually the authorities don't give you the authorization to build those houses. What we need to do is to ensure that you have affordable housing in areas like East London, which, by the way, have got fantastic transport infrastructure connectivity, and to ensure that actually the price point is such that young people can get on to the ladder. One of the things that I did when I was much younger, and probably the most important thing for me, was to get onto the housing ladder. But of course, houses were so much cheaper, or flats, as it was. My first flat that I bought was much cheaper, relatively far more affordable. And that is why I think young people are feeling so disenfranchised. When you look at the proportion of their income they're spending on their rent, we need to get that down to ensure that actually they have more money to spend in the shops, in the pubs, in the clubs. We also Rob talked again this morning about Cambridge, because of course that is a science supercentre, and we need to ensure that we can actually stand behind our tech companies, for example, and AI companies. We need to make sure that we're actually building a much bigger, bolder Britain, and we have gone through years and years of managed decline, and under a Reform UK government, that stops.
Now, he also said that they're going to strip the Bank of England of distractions, which include the distraction of net zero, but it will remain independent, but it'll be held to account for its mistakes, like quantitative easing. How will he be able to hold them to account? What will be their punishment?
Well, I think the fact that what Rob was talking about was to ensure that the Bank of England actually concentrates on what it needs to do, its core principle of keeping inflation low and interest rates low. The point about this is he mentions that it needs reforming, and he mentioned also we need to strip it from this madness of net zero. By the way, the cost of net zero is between 800 billion and 3 trillion pounds. He talked about having cheap energy, and the energy prices underpins everything we do in this country. country. People know how much they're spending domestically on their energy, but also for businesses. If you have very high energy costs, then our industrial base disappears. For example, steel making, it's far too high. We're going to unleash cheap energy. And he talked about the gold under the sea, under the North Sea. And that means making sure we extract oil and gas, bring down those energy prices, but also fast track these small modular reactors, these nuclear reactors, and stop worshipping at the altar of net zero, because it is complete folly. We emit 1% of global emissions. And at the moment, everyone is being forced to suffer, to be punished for an abstract argument which has been foisted on us by a failing government.
George Osborne announced these small modular nuclear reactors in 2016. This government ran, or I think the previous government ran a competition for them, but they granted the competition winner, in terms of who's going to build these, to the person who employed the most asylum seekers in their supply chain. They had to have 50-50 women companies, I mean, nuclear physicists. I mean, sure, we'd love all nuclear physicists to be 50-50, but, like, clearly the industry's not there. I mean, the most bizarre way to run a procurement process. David Bull, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there, but thanks so much for joining us, Chairman of the Reform Party.
Thank you very much, David. Right, well, ministers now are reportedly considering abandoning their minimum wage pledge. I mean, this would almost feel like a bit of a U-turn. There's amid concerns that it could worsen youth unemployment. They were warned. Recent figures from the ONS show that youth unemployment is at its highest level in more than a decade, with businesses warning that high hiring costs are pricing young workers out of a job.
Well, joining us now is the former Cabinet Office Chief Economist during Gordon Brown's government, Jonathan Portes. Jonathan, thanks indeed for being with us. It is true, isn't it, that if you raise the sort of price floor for employment, you'll get less employment?
Well, wait a minute. We've had... that's what people said when the minimum wage was introduced in the early 2000s.
Yes.
And we've had about 15 years of sustained and recently very large increases in the minimum wage. And there isn't actually, there's been a huge number of studies. And as I suspect you know, Tom, the overwhelming consensus is that the minimum wage has not had a negative.
Jonathan, you and I both know that when it was first introduced, the government was very, very worried about employment effects.
Indeed.
That's why they had a committee set up to determine a low enough level to avoid those effects. Ever since, I think it's 2016, however, it's been political decisions rather than independent decisions that have hiked this up and up and up and up and up. And we don't know what the employment rate would be in a world where we didn't have this wage, right? But we do know that now the minimum wage is so high that in some parts of the country, the North East, Northern Ireland, the East Midlands, in these areas, it is over 75% of the median wage. I mean, this is clearly an international outlier. It is just too high.
So you're right at some level, but I think the point is that this is an empirical question, and indeed we got away with it for a very long time of actually raising it higher than many people, including me, I think, thought was wise without having any negative employment effects. I think there probably is reason. I think you're right that it in some areas and for some people it probably is too high, and that's why the government's I think. Whether or not this is a U-turn, I'm not sure. They never set a date on this, but the government signaling that it wants to slow down, especially for younger people, this plan to put the young people's minimum wage up to the main rate. I think that does make sense for the reasons you've said. So I think this is welcome. I think they realize that actually you can go too far too fast on this.
When Nigel Farage pointed this out, he was literally laughed out of school for it, wasn't he? As if, he wants to reduce the minimum wage. Oh, that's terrible, that's terrible. But on the other side of it, the problem that we have with a lot of the benefits is that a lot of people are actually on benefits and in work. So the idea is you do want the wages to go up, really.
Well, you do want wages to go up, but you in-work benefits are necessary. Because people have different circumstances. If you want people low-income working families not to be in poverty, then you need in-work benefits, because you simply cannot and should not raise the minimum wage high enough to ensure that somebody, say a single parent with 2 children, is out of poverty. That's simply not going to happen. So you need both a reasonably generous minimum wage, but one that is not so high that, as Tom says, it damages employment, at the same time as you need some form of in-work support for, in particular, low-income working families.
A bit of evidence that minimum wages are most damaging for younger people, because if you have to pay a 25-year-old the same that you'd have to pay a 17-year-old, you're going to hire the 25-year-old. The competitive advantage that a 17 or an 18-year-old might have is you can pay them less, and it's their first job. They're only on that wage until they prove themselves. They then earn more. Tony Blair understood this when he introduced the minimum wage, because he set a different rate for younger people. But even though this government is now saying it's going to slow down this transition, they still want to get rid of that younger rate for younger people, that lower rate for younger people in its entirety. I mean, they are still committed to unwinding the Blair settlement that, as you say, seemed to work out OK, in favour of something that's much more dirigiste.
Yes, and I think I think certainly they haven't put a timeline on it, and I think that's right. And I think we would. It certainly is something we would only do for the reasons that you suggest. I personally would be sceptical. I could be convinced otherwise if over time it turns out not to be doing too much damage. But I certainly think you wouldn't want to do it without pretty strong evidence that you're not harming the prospects of younger people. I would, however, I mean, I think it's quite interesting. I've just been looking at the data from yesterday. So if you look at the data that was released yesterday, 18 months ago, the number of 18, 20 to 24-year-olds on payrolls was 3.46 million. As of yesterday, it was 3.45 million. So that's a fall of a little less than a third of 1%. So that's not good. Obviously, we'd rather see the numbers on payrolls going up. But to suggest that employers simply aren't hiring young people, that just isn't true. You know, we know from the data that actually hundreds of thousands of young people are still being hired despite all this. So I don't think we should be.
We do know the cumulative effect. I mean, every single month we've had payroll numbers decrease of this government. Every single month.
No, that's not true. No, that's not true.
It's not true.
Is it, payroll has decreased.
Keep on getting
there's been some revisions. I apologise. I haven't seen the most up to date in that case. I mean, up until recently.
You're right. You're right. We should be worried. I mean, things are not going well in the labour market, but equally the bottom is not falling out of the labour market either.
Inflection point in around the budget. It has been made more expensive to employ people, and that's had an effect.
Yes. I think there's almost certainly some impact of it being more expensive to employ people. And I think, as we've agreed, that the government is right not to press ahead with this idea of converging the minimum wage for younger people and that for the rest of us. But equally, I think we should also recognise that over the last 15 years, the minimum wage has been, under governments of both parties, has been broadly successful, and certainly more successful than many people like me expected when it was first introduced.
All right, thank you very much, Jonathan Portes. He's a former cabinet officer, chief economist during the Brown government. Right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Put the teeth back in. Now, a reminder of that breaking news. A British patrol has ordered a group of Chagosians who attempted to set up a settlement to leave the island.
Well, the Chagos First Minister, Measley Mandarin, who led the group of people that landed on the archipelago on Monday, spoke to us here at GB News earlier.
Bottom line, is our Prime Minister. The decision is in his hand to save his compatriot, his British fellows.
Well, joining us now is GB News' Home and Security Editor Mark White and also human rights lawyer Shoaib Khan. Now, Mark, I want to ask you about this because we've got these Chagosians. They have arrived on this island. Surely they should be allowed to make a proper claim to live on that island, Mark?
Well, that's certainly something that Sohaib hopefully can hopefully shed some light on shortly. But just to bring you up to speed on where we are, this group of Chagosians, just 4 members of the Chagosian community, but key members, because among them is Mesley Mandarin, the First Minister, and his father, who was actually born on the very atoll, one of 60 atolls that make up the Chagos archipelago. They landed there this week, and they want to claim rights back there again 50 years after having been so forcefully evicted from those islands and have been really without a home ever since. Many of them camped, as we know, around Gatwick Airport. Well, this group, this small group to begin with, they hope more will join them, wanted there to get a footfall to just claim their rights back on the island. But within a day, just today, a British Indian Ocean patrol boat has arrived there, served a notice on the crew of the boat that's filming that patrol boat. You can see the British Indian Ocean Territory patrol vessel just out there, that orange, not much bigger than a rigid inflatable, to be honest, with 4 crew on board. But they served papers to the crew on board this boat and to the 4 Chagosians, and also, representatives with them on shore. And that order said, leave the islands immediately or face arrest. And then a potential jail term, they say, according to the papers, of up to 3 years in jail, and indeed a fine as well of some £3,000. So it certainly looks like the heavy hand of the British state at play here, and it's not been lost on many of our audience who say it cannot be right that you have a government, Sir Keir Starmer, in charge of that government, who's done little, if anything, to stop the small boats crisis daily across the English Channel. But when it comes to this, in the Indian Ocean, we can summon up a boat and immediately try and evict people who claim to have a legitimate right. Well, let's speak to Shoaib Khan now, a human rights lawyer. Thank you very much for joining us. Give us your expert insight here. Do the Chagosians, do you think, have any legal claim to be back on these islands?
Hi. I think from a legal point of view, I mean, we know the international treaty, obviously the agreement that we've signed with Mauritius now. And generally, we've had international court judgments as well. So I think legally, as the law stands right now, and as considering that agreement, and it has been obviously signed, by the free will of Mauritius and the UK, I think it's very, very hard for these people to stake a claim there legally. But I think we have to see, firstly, what's led up to this, and from a human rights or humanitarian point of view. And I think it's not the first time that, the British government seems to be working in this way. It takes over a place, whether you call it colonization, but whatever you want to call it, take over a place. And then when you're leaving, you actually seem to leave, the people being further harmed even than they would have been even before you went there. And I think that's the case here as well. That these people, as you say, it's been decades. They've been waiting at some point, we'll be able to return to our homeland. And then just when there seemed to be some glimmer of hope, somehow they thought, okay, we might be getting closer to that. And we've signed this deal with Mauritius. And now, obviously, I mean, legally, it might be very tough for them to do that. But I think, obviously, we have to consider, these people, these families, where they came from. It's their homeland. Why are we the only ones just sitting here, And as this happened now, you talked about the heavy hand. But that's, to be honest, that is what the British government does. And these are people, obviously, who've been mainly in Britain. And so, we feel closer to them. They've been here. But generally, that's what the British government does. That it'll take over a country. Many
people have said, why on earth don't the Chagosians actually use the ECHR, which has been used to such good effect by people that have come across the channel that might have actually more spurious claims to settle, to remain here in the UK. Surely a group of Chagosians who are originally from that island, remember one of the 4 who just landed this week was born on the very atoll that he's just landed on.
I mean, a number of reasons there why that doesn't, but what that basically shows is that why we need human rights law and these international treaties to be stronger and not made weaker, like there are calls now, we need to withdraw from the ECHR. So, but one of the reasons is because it is the European Convention on Human Rights. Obviously, Mauritius isn't a signatory to that. The Chagos Islands isn't a signatory to that. The US, they've obviously got their army base at Diego Garcia. They're not a party to the ECHR. But I think you're right. Yes, if we had a sort of international human rights treaty as strong and as powerful as the ECHR with an independent court, then yeah, there might be a legal claim. But the point is there isn't now.
What about the fact that the treaty hasn't been ratified yet? So is it already legally binding without that?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, but I think even if it's not been ratified, the point is, unless the governments actually come forward and they say that we don't intend to ratify it or we're withdrawing, then obviously, I mean, if both the parties who have come to the agreement, they have every intention of proceeding with it, which does seem to be the case. And previously, obviously, there was opposition, for instance, from America and other countries. In the past few days, we even saw they seem to be happy with it for whatever reason. Suddenly, they're supporting the agreement. I think it's very hard for these individuals to make any sort of legal claim saying it's not been ratified yet, and therefore we should be allowed to go back. Because for now, obviously, it is the British government in charge of that, that territory, and we're giving it, selling it, whatever you want to call it, to Mauritius. And so obviously, we are the ones in power there. What power do these few individuals, do these families have? And I think that's the case, isn't it, about whether it's international or domestic law, the inequality of power when it comes to the state, and which is why human rights laws need to be strengthened so that individuals can actually bring legal claims against governments.
Well, Shoaib Khan and indeed Mark White, thanks indeed for bringing us all of that. What an extraordinary story that seems to run contrary to every fibre of everything that Keir Starmer has previously said in his previous life.
All right, well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show.
Yes, Essex Police assesses new information about private jets linked to Jeffrey Epstein through Stansted Airport, as calls grow for a full British investigation. But after the break...
Unemployment rising, inactivity soaring, and the NHS is stepping in by saying that 9 million Brits could have therapy. Is mental health the key to fixing Britain's jobs problem?
Well, all of that and more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, though. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's coming up to 2:30. Now, the NHS is urging over 9 million people with mental health issues and anxiety to go and get therapy.
You're going to go on? Go.
Right, well, it's all, of course, about an attempt to tackle rising worklessness in Britain, as mental health is now the leading cause of long-term sickness. So is therapy the solution to sorting out rising levels of worklessness in Britain?
Well, joining us now is therapist Sally Baker. Sally, do you think that that's what it is? I mean, a lot of people claiming anxiety and then they're being signed off, and that can't be good. I mean, if I'm anxious, the last thing I want to do is be sitting at home going like this, thinking about it all. You know, I need to be taking my mind off it. I need to be at work. Why are they being signed off, and why is this seeming to be the answer? Sign them off, put them on benefits, and they can chill out there and get over it. That's not going to happen.
The idea that the younger generation are snowflakes and are incapable of holding down a job makes great television, but it doesn't really reflect what's happening in society. 9 million people being urged by the NHS means that anxiety is no longer a personal issue, it's a societal canary in the mine shaft. There's something going wrong, and it's the unprecedented levels of pressure, you know, social media in comparison, unstable work, not being able to meet all the milestones that ordinary other previous generations would have had, like leaving home. Students are faced with £50,000 worth of debt. It's all stacked against our young people, and they're really struggling.
I'd be anxious with £50,000 of debt coming out of university without a job. I'm not surprised, but then the answer is get a job and start paying it back.
But it's chicken and egg, isn't it? It's overwhelm. It's complete. It's panic. It's all sorts of. It's depression. So what we need to make employability more feasible is to add in an element of mental health care. So we're not talking about therapy that goes on, you know, the old Freudian classic model where you get to lie down on a sofa and it takes years. The private sector has been working with neuroscience for decades now, but those approaches haven't been adopted by the NHS yet. You can't just roll out CBT, which has been a great success for millions of people.
So cognitive behavioural therapy?
Sorry, cognitive behavioural therapy, which is that's the primary approach that the NHS takes for when people present with anxiety. But it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Everyone is different. So we need to offer a plethora of different choices. And we need to do the mix between telehealth, and also therapeutic interventions with therapists as well, face-to-face. So some companies are already doing that. Orpheus Mind Technologies offer an app but they're training therapists as well, so that you can have a mix of therapeutic input and the backup of the app so that people can self-help. Wanstead Mental Health Clinic in East London, they offer group therapies for lots of different kinds of groups, women's groups, men's groups, veteran groups. That's the way forward. We need to open up what therapy looks like in this modern age.
Sally, do different people respond to therapy in different ways? I mean, I'm a little bit of a cynic, I suppose, I must admit, when it comes to this sort of stuff, but some people find that it's really, really helpful. I mean, is this idea that we should be sort of pushing people towards therapy when actually it might not do that much? I mean, ultimately, there are so many people in the United States of America who have therapists, and I would argue perhaps maybe too many. Is there a level where this can get too saturated?
We haven't got there yet. The waiting lists and access points for therapy in the UK are really, really challenging. People are waiting a long time. Young people are waiting even longer. It's all a bit desperate. I mean, you know, the austerity, 14 years of Tory misrule, it's been cut to the bone. If you think the NHS is struggling, the mental health services with the NHS have always been the poor relation. So the idea that 9 million more people can join an already overloaded system is slightly bizarre. They need to open up what therapy looks like in this modern age.
Sally, do you think that people are getting a little bit soft? And I'm not being, I'm not dissing the fact that, some people need therapy, but I've lost count of the people who say, oh, it's my anxiety, I can't do this. Oh, I've got ADHD, they think they have, or oh, I've got... Almost as though it's worn as a badge of honour that they've got something wrong that they need some sort of help with. Do you think that perhaps there's just a load of people out, because it can't be that many people seriously needing therapy, and those many people out of work specifically for things like anxiety, and it just doesn't really add up.
Sure, but every generation, every older generation always looks at the younger generation and finds them lacking in some way. That's happened generation upon generation. And of course, there are going to be some slackers and there are going to be some people who misuse the system. But 9 million, we have to look at what it is. Anxiety is a physical and an emotional response to high levels of stress, unprecedented levels of stress. It's the fight and flight and fear factors that our physiology goes into beyond our control, beyond our conscious control. So when people are really suffering, they're suffering for things that are beyond their control. And we can either tell them that they're snowflakes and they're weak and lack resilience, or we can give them the tools they need. It's been taken out of schools. There's no creativity left in schools. Art classes have been cut, music's been cut. Dancing, even singing, those are all factors that children would have learnt ways of managing their own mental well-being. They've been cut to the bone. We need to bring that back at child level. We need to teach techniques so that people can self-manage their own moods, their own behaviour. Okay, or otherwise it shows up in alcoholism, drug abuse, violence, and it goes on for decades.
Yeah. All right, Sally Baker, thank you very much. She's a therapist. Oh, very interesting. Thank you so much.
Well, lots more still to come on today's programme.
Essex Police assess new information about private flights linked to Jeffrey Epstein through Stansted Airport. As calls grow for a full UK investigation.
All of that and much more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Hello, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Plenty going on again today. We've got some pulses of heavy rain across the south and Northern Ireland. Later on, we could see some snow, particularly over parts of the Midlands and Wales, along with southern parts of the Pennines. Low pressure is dominating, one sitting out to the west, but it's this little feature coming up from the southwest that's giving everything a little bit more energy and providing some heavier bursts of rain across the south. Of course, it's been so wet here that this extra rain could cause some further issues. A very wet day for Northern Ireland. Some of that showery rain getting into southwest Scotland, but much of northern Scotland dry and bright. Much of eastern England staying dry but cloudy and quite cold as well. Temperatures only 4 or 5 degrees for many of us, and certainly feeling cold with the wet weather across the south. As that moves northwards, likely to generate some snow, initially over the hills of Wales, but could come down to lower levels later on. So one to watch. Quite a wet evening rush hour across the south. Rain mostly for the Midlands, but some snow is possible, certainly over parts of Wales too. And a warning still in place for rain and a bit of hill snow across Northern Ireland into this evening. A few showers in the northeast of Scotland, but as I said, a good part of Scotland actually dry through the day today. Now, we're likely to see the snow getting a bit heavier over parts of the West Midlands and into the Welsh Marches and across Wales and up into southern parts of the Pennines. I say most of the snow over the hills, but we could easily see a few centimetres here over the higher ground, but even down to lower levels there could be some for a time, and obviously not very pleasant to drive through. Many areas just seeing rain though, which will linger across a good part of England overnight. As the skies do start to clear, things could turn a bit icy over parts of Wales and again the West Midlands, where we've seen any snow falling through the night and still a bit of rain around in the morning. Staying pretty damp across northeast England tomorrow, rain returning to the northwest, otherwise things looking a little dry, but still on the cold side. There are signs of things turning milder for the weekend.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News every week.
You're not only watching and listening to our programmes, you're becoming part of them too.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Use extra care on the A9 Dornoch Bridge, where high winds are affecting driving conditions. In Gateshead, a crash on the A1 southbound exit slip to the A1231 has one of 2 lanes closed. In Leicester, an incident on the A46 southbound between the A6 and the A5630 has closed all lanes. In West Berkshire, a broken-down vehicle on the M4 westbound between Junction 14 and Junction 15 is blocking 1 lane. And on the trains, Gatwick Express has no service, and cross-country is disrupted between Stockport and Bournemouth. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. 39 minutes after 2 o'clock. Now, British police have begun to investigate claims that Jeffrey Epstein used dozens of private flights into UK airports to traffic women.
Well, it comes as the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown said that documents show how the disgraced financier and paedophile was able to use Stansted Airport in Essex to fly in girls from Latvia, Lithuania and Russia.
Well, we're joined now by royal author Paul Connew to tell us more. Paul, this is looking very, very bad. It's in particular, and as we said, Andrew has not pleaded guilty to anything, but it's looking very bad if these flights were coming in to Stansted. What more can you tell us?
Indeed it does, but it's not Stansted Airport as you and I would know it. It's a private area run by a private company. And what's startling to me is that you expect a flight manifest to give full details, but things are vague, like 3 women, no names, etc. And this morning, everyone was reporting there were 4 police forces investigating Epstein's so-called Lolita Express. It's now 5 because Bedfordshire police have announced they're looking into the flights, using Luton Airport. And it turns out, looking at the Epstein files, there are altogether 90 flights in and out of the UK, sometimes transit flights taking passengers elsewhere, and 15 of them came after Epstein's 2008 paedophile conviction. So, this one is really expanding, and it now seems the National Police Chiefs Council are going to actually coordinate the various investigations and approach the American authorities, the Department of Justice in the States, to try to get more information and more unredacted documents. So it really is hotting up for the former Prince Andrew.
And yet, Paul, even if you fly into this country on a private jet from another country, you do still have to show your passport. Yeah. There isn't a suggestion here that people were smuggled into the country, or is there?
Well, that's a good question, but there doesn't seem to be any record of what checks were carried out. So this is what I mean. The whole Epstein files dump as it is so sort of huge. What one lawyer told me, it's a bit like trying to put together the world's biggest jigsaw puzzle. And it's so scattered and often without any sort of context that it is like trying to sort through a mass of information and trying to find what fits where. But to add to Andrew's problems, the cross-party business select committee now say that they're likely to investigate his activities when he was a trade envoy, but feeding stuff to Epstein, and they have the power to, if they seek it, to subpoena him to appear before it. It's a very rarely used stage by a parliamentary committee, but but the power is there in theory, and it'd be interesting to see what happens if they ask Andrew to appear. Just it may be a little harder in this country than it is for him to have so far rejected the requests from the US Congress. But I think King Charles is in a difficult position here, because somebody has to put pressure on Andrew to cooperate with the American inquiry, especially after Hillary Clinton this week publicly said, she's appearing, so's Bill, and urging Prince Andrew to do, or the former Prince Andrew to do the same. So the pressure is really mounting.
I was going to say, somebody must have picked up these people when they landed at the airport as well. So there must be some form of record in some way, even if it's a visual record, a recording or something. There must be some way of finding out who picked up these people when they got off the planes.
You're right, but in fact, but it isn't always clear, I gather, from the Epstein files themselves. I mean, we've also, of course, got Scotland Yard carrying out an investigation, you know, into both Prince Andrew and the former Lord, well, still present, but soon to be ex-Lord Mandelson. It really is an extraordinary situation. And you've got Gordon Brown, as your bulletin said, pressing for a major police inquiry into both Mandelson and Prince Andrew. And you've got the Daily Mail, almost campaigning now on the grounds that, for the sake of saving the monarchy, there should be a large, full-scale police investigation into the former second in line to the throne. You could not make this up.
It is an extraordinary story. It doesn't look like it's slowing down anytime soon. But Paul Connew, thanks indeed for talking through this particular trouble.
What an entangled web. And, of course, Andrew has said is not pled guilty to any of those charges. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show.
It's Ash Wednesday, and we'll soon be joined by a priest in the studio for blessing the heads of London commuters. He went viral recently for doing just the same.
But first, if you're in search of some holiday sun, here's the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Things are warming up in the Canaries over the next few days after a very wet winter so far. It does look a bit drier, certainly in southern Spain, but there is still some rain to come over northern Spain on Thursday. Some more snow for the Pyrenees, fresh dumps of heavy snow heading to the Alps. Another band of rain sinking south across Italy, bringing some wet weather to Rome on Thursday. But once that's out of the way, the sun should be shining once more in the Italian capital for Friday, Saturday and Sunday. Goodbye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray. Are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline.
Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock, only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, DC.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Now, today marks Ash Wednesday, 40 days and 40 nights of the holy season of Lent.
Well, last year, Notting Hill priest Pat Allerton took the tradition to the pavements of Notting Hill, going viral in the process.
So is Lent still resonating in modern Britain? And what, if anything, are you giving up?
Well, joining us now in the studio is priest Pat Allerton. Pat, thanks indeed for coming into the studio. What gave you the idea of just going out there onto the streets and marking people in public?
Well, I've done a few things on the streets in the past. I went out on the streets in COVID, taking a hymn and a prayer, trying to lift spirits when we were all confined to our homes. But I've also seen other priests from different traditions do it in their robes and getting out and being public. And I just think it's so important for the church today to be seen, to be heard. We've got a voice, we've got good news. So I decided to give it a go last year. I'd done it the year before, actually, but I decided to give it a go last minute again last year, and a colleague of mine or two came to help, and they decided to film a bit of it and just put this thing out on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and it had an amazing response. Millions of people watched it, which took me by surprise.
Oh, that's lovely. And when you bless people, what do people usually say? What's their sort of response?
Well, I guess you get quite a lot of, Notting Hill, quite a lot of international tourists coming by, but on the whole, people are very receptive. I stand at the top of the stairs and I say out words to people coming out of the tube. Receive the sign of the cross this Ash Wednesday. For dust you are, and to dust you will return. But the Lord Jesus is the resurrection and the life. And those who believe in him will never die. And I say words of that ilk. And then people come forward to be anointed, be signed with the sign of the cross.
And so that's when the tradition, that's what the sort of tradition stands for. That's what it means. How long has this been going on in the history of the church?
Well, Lent began very early in the church's life, the 40 days leading up to Easter, you know, the celebration of the resurrection of Jesus. And it's a period of fasting. And it's a good question you've got me, Tom, on when exactly the burning of ashes, Palm Sunday crosses from the year before began, because that's traditionally the ashes are mixed with oil and then put on people's foreheads. And I heard a beautiful description of what that represents from a Catholic priest, Father Mike Schmitz, who said, the ashes remind me that I'm a sinner, but the cross reminds me I have a saviour.
Well, on that note, we've got a minute of the programme left, and I think you've brought along some ash to bless us.
I've brought a bit of ash to bless you guys with, so I better, so I'm not left out, do it myself. So the sign of the cross.
Oh no, you have to clean your hands on that first for me. No, I have allergies. You have to clean your hands on that.
Oh, right, OK.
Well,
I'll do a separate...
Do it to me.
I'll do it to you, Tom, and then a separate finger. Receive the sign of the cross and believe on the Lord Jesus, Tom. He loves you, and you will live forever.
Oh,
Nana?
God, no, can't live forever.
Receive the sign of the cross. For dust you are, and to dust you will return.
That's
but
kind
the
of
Lord
scratchy.
Jesus Christ lives forever.
Scratchy, isn't it?
Amen. Yeah, it is a bit scratchy. Sorry about that.
Well, what an appropriate way to end the programme today on Ash Wednesday. Thank you so much, Pat, for coming in, and indeed for blessing both of us.
Yes, thank you for watching Good Afternoon Britain. You're back tomorrow with Dawn, but up next it is Martin Daubney, but Charlie Peters is in for him. Enjoy. Weather is next.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Afternoon, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Plenty going on through the rest of today, and as we go into tonight, we are going to see a bit more snow falling in parts of Wales, the Midlands and parts of northern England. Also in the south, mostly rain that we're seeing. Same goes for Northern Ireland. These two areas of low pressure pushing their way northwards. Some heavy bursts of rain across the south. We've got a Met Office warning.